All right, I think we're live. Mic check 1 2 1 2. Mic check 1 2 1 2. If anyone in the chat can hear me, just push one. I don't think my volume is up. All right, I got a confirmation. Yeah, thank you for the confirmation. This is just an addendum from the discussion that we had last night with King Sigma. Shout out to King Sigma. And Happy New Year to everyone. Happy New Year. So an addendum on the economic outlook for 2020. I had the opportunity to this morning to go through all of the economic hangouts that we had for 2019. And what I wanted to do is make sure that we weren't exchanging words for the sake of exchanging words, but to actually provide sources to a lot of what we were saying, because what was being, we were being challenged on, the economic outlook overall versus the economic outlook for Black people. And so what I did this morning was gather all of the live streams and pull out the dockets. And so what I'm going to do is pull out the dockets, and this is not just for King Sigma, this is for everyone else who had questions and concerns about some of the stuff that we were talking about. So let me go back to January 11th. Our channel was suspended for about maybe 6 or 7 weeks at best. And so there's a gap in between the first live stream to the next. So let me make sure I preference that. And so let me pull up some of the dockets. Let me share the screen so that everyone can see what we're working with here. Now, there's no link for Dollar Will's chart analysis. Dollar Will used to do chart analysis on our channel, so we would have to skip all the way to the end of the live stream to see Dollar Will's chart analysis. But Dollar Will's chart analysis actually gives a peek into Western markets in terms of gold, currency, foreign exchanges, and so on and so forth. So if people are interested in that, they would have to sit down and go through all of those live streams and listen to the end for Dollar Will's perspective on chart analysis. So this is the first one, episode 124. First one on complex. We did cover startup investment in Africa jumped to a record numbers in 2018. So let me just pull this up real quick, because we were talking about markets expanding and markets constricting in the US, but markets expansion outside of the US. Africa was one of them. And so here we see startup investment in Africa jumped to a record levels in 2018 as later stage rounds rose. So this is from 2019, but the article is in reference to the economic outlook. And so it says, in total, African startups raised a record of $725.6 million across 458 deals, the 2018 venture investment report by WeTracker shows. So $457 million and accounted for 61% of total funding received. why did we talk about this? Because we were talking about market shifting on the continent as opposed to in America. We weren't talking about, we're talking about Black America. So we're Africans in reference into Black Americans inside a first world nation, a global power. And what we're seeing here is trends over the last few years, 2015, 2016, 2017, then 2018, we see a rapid increase in terms of investment into startups in Africa. And we don't see the same investments here in the West in terms of Black America, right? So why did we talk about this? We wanted to talk about the focus in where, in terms of the global economic shifts. Where are the trends going? The trends are moving east, like I was saying before, like we had talked about last night, that all economic investment is now moving outside of the U.S. and moving into other markets outside of the West. All right. Let me, and so that's on episode 124. Amazon to buy Sears to expand Whole Food brand. We talked about this in 2018, that we talked about that months prior. So we talked about this back in September before there was any sort of news on it, because we had projected that a whale was going to come in.
Sure did.
Buy up Sears leftover assets. And months later, this is in January, we talked about that in September. Months later, Amazon came to fruition as one of the whales to buy Sears. And we mentioned Amazon. So if we go back to 2018, we did talk about that. A lot of the projections that we made, we were 99.99% accurate. So
AMD is another one.
AMD is another one. So we weren't just blowing smoke.
There's actually more if we really think about it. If we really started to think about it, if we talk about like our automotive industry projections,
mm-hmm.
How automation was going to affect the plants, mm-hmm. There's just been too many. See, I guess the issue that we're having here is that we understand that these things are congruent, right? These things actually run in synergy. So you're not just talking about one specific thing, right? With no sort of reverence to, things that are related to it. So when we talk about automation, you're going to talk about employment, but you're also going to be talking about technology. And you could separate those into three individual topics to talk about, but you have to, right. You got to look at how they all intertwine when we're moving into this new space, because technology is the glue for all of these individual topics. Tech is the glue. That's the central key component here. So it can be very easy to listen to something that we say and maybe try to key in on a specific point. But if you're not seeing the greater context, then, you're really not listening.
Right. Right. So now we move on to episode 144. And we talked about how blockchain and cryptocurrencies were going to affect local brick and mortars in terms of banking institutions, financial institutions. FinTech was going to have a massive impact on the banking sector from a legacy standpoint, as everything starts to shift into the FinTech standpoint. And so in this episode, we talked about auto loan delinquencies set record high. You don't have auto loan delinquencies unless you have a poor worker economy, right? So you're two of your major drivers for the economy on the ground is housing and automotive purchases. Mm-hmm. And so we talked about auto loan delinquency being set at a record high from Business Insider. Let me pull up Business Insider real quick.
Links were requested, so.
Yep. A record 7 million Americans have stopped paying their car loans, and even economists are surprised. Economists are surprised. We're not just saying the sky's falling, right?
That's good. That's good.
Hey, what's going on? Millions of Americans are struggling with their car payments, and even economists are surprised. According to a new report from the Federal Reserve Bank of New York, the Federal Reserve of New York is saying this. More than 7 million Americans have reached serious delinquency status on their auto loans, meaning they are at least 90 days behind on payments. So 90 days is 3 months for those who don't really understand what we're saying. 90 days, right? Yep. You don't have people falling in delinquency at 7 million if the economy is working very well in that regard for the working class.
If the economy is doing well, actually purchases would be going up.
Mm-hmm. The data shows that most of the borrowers whose auto loans have recently moved into delinquency are people younger than 30 years old, millennials, and people with low credit scores. 8% of borrowers with credit scores below.
And don't forget Generation Z too.
Yes, it is. Mm-hmm. Below 620, otherwise known as subprime, went from good standing to delinquent on their auto loans in the fourth quarter of 2018. So what we were talking about was, if the economy is doing so well, you wouldn't have record numbers, and this is coming from the Federal Reserve in New York, of delinquencies. So again, we're not making this up. We're not making this up. Hey, Happy New Year, BGS. Black Gnostics is in the chat.
What's going on?
Yeah, what's going on, man?
Well, you know, can I give a personal example of how much money I lost and how that's not net positives? Mm-hmm. Okay,
sure.
All right. In the trucking industry, I used to do a ton of freight for Payless, for Sears.
Array issues.
Yeah, I mean, I used to do a ton of stuff for them. The auto industry, they closed down the plant in Lordstown, Ohio. I used to do a ton of stuff from like Northern Ohio, parts of Michigan, to like Lordstown, Ohio. Dana Dry Ridge. There's a place that used to make brakes for all those places. Now, those were losses overall. Those were net gains for Mexico. That doesn't mean that I made any money. I lost a hell of a lot of money doing that shit. Mm-hmm. Like it's as soon as the trade deal started. Now, I normally would be doing containers from now until like June, but he wiped out completely the container industry when he started with the trade tariffs and all that shit with China. Was that a net loss? Yes. Was that a net gains for people? Absolutely not. There's still trucks sitting from all these big container companies in like Columbus and like Virginia, like all on the East Coast, places near Chicago. All these people had to go into the dry van market, which drove the prices of dry van freight down if you didn't have a contract already set. Mm-hmm. So there are net positives and net losses, but the answer to the question is always for who?
Hey, MOT, can you explain the difference? MOT, can you explain the difference between the container, like freight that's moved by container versus would you say it was flatbed?
Yeah, flatbed.
What I mean, so like, what's the difference, and why would there be? So like I mean, because you know the markets, you know this industry. So for everybody else listening, what is the difference? Why would there be a pivot to move towards a flatbed mode of transportation, you know, and then abandon the container side of things? Just so people can understand.
Hey, you guys, I'm gonna come back. I gotta do something.
Yes, sir. Okay.
Okay, so mostly flatbed stuff that I move is either bricks or concrete or stuff that's made here. Stuff that comes in containers, they come shipped in from other countries. Mm-hmm. So the stuff I do from flatbed, it's already made here. I'm already going to a plant like ammunition plants that I go to pick up stuff, or like I said, brick factories and all that kind of stuff, mm-hmm. Or like in the summertime produce, which costs nothing but it costs time. Now, for all that stuff that's in those containers, those are manufactured goods that could be sitting on that lot for 3 years, right? So it's like when I used to do like Abercrombie and Fitch and the Gap and all that kind of shit in Columbus, you know, from all the containers that was coming from Vietnam and China, all that stuff is already pre-manufactured already to specifications. Now, all the stuff that's happening in the United States is US-based manufacturing. So when the trade deal happened, it made it so that way the goods that were coming from China was way higher. So it kind of boosted domestic productivity a little bit, but at the end of the day, they still had to compete with the prices they were actually shipping from China. So it really didn't make any sense to be
Didn't make any
shipping
sense, right?
to ship stuff domestically flatbed when you're just waiting out to see what's going to happen with the trade market. Now, all this stuff sounds like it's way different and it's an amalgamation of things that are happening, but there are net losses and net gains everywhere. When I lost most of the
Somebody else
shit,
gained.
yes. When I lost that $750,000 fucking contract and that shit went like null and void and nobody else was able to pick that up. Now the production of the shoes didn't stop. It's just shifted. Like people don't understand losses versus market shifting. When people talk about trucking in an abstract, they're always talking about the people who provide advertising. They're losing revenue, not the smaller owners, because the smaller owners have disruptive technology of like Uber Freight and DHE trucking and like 1,000 different other apps to where the market is shifting towards smaller clients who they can see, smell, and touch. Because at the end of the day, leaving your shit with like Landstar or what's the other big one? C.H. Robinson, they get those contracts, they sign those contracts for years. They move that shit for $7, $8 a mile, and they will make sure if they don't get like $1 a mile or less, they won't even move their shit. So now those profits are shifting from those people to smaller carriers. Nobody focuses on smaller carriers because smaller carriers, 100 trucks or less, who does a certain amount of shit, who actually have data professionals, because I'm an analyst by heart. I can analyze this shit and I can move. Other companies that are far bigger than me are losing their shit because they can't move, because they got these $200,000-$300,000 fucking trucks on the road. They got to pay people like $1,000, and I have none of that overhead, and I can move. I am a speedboat who can easily change. They are a cruise ship that cannot easily change. I'm not a publicly traded company, which means I can make moves in the secret and keep my profits up. Those people as publicly traded companies, they have to announce all their moves so the entire industry can move with them.
Hence Celadon?
Yes.
Yeah.
Trust me.
Let me.
Trust me. If Celadon would have stayed at like where they were 15 years ago, they would still be fine. They would still have the same profit margin. They tried to invest in another company, tried to boost that up. They both ended up sinking at the same time. It meant nothing for the trucking industry, because guess what? No trucks left the actual highway. Just their trucks left the highway. And the market shifted to something else. And now Celadon, I'm not going to say what they're called right now because I don't want my channel flagged either. It's just, look, they took all the freight and they went somewhere else with it. That's the essence of the business. The freight. Not the people, not the equipment.
And the bankruptcy protects their assets. A lot of people think that, that means that, no, that it actually protects their.
No, it just means that they have to restructure their finances. That's it.
That means that they screwed over every single person that loaned them money that they owe. That's exactly what that means. Which means they formed, I'm gonna tell you what they did. They formed another company with all their freight. And they're sending their people over there to Ritchie Brothers, 30 miles outside of Columbus, and they're buying all their shit back at cost that they made it look like they gave up in bankruptcy protection. So when I went over there today, they was like, all that shit's there, but all that shit's already purchased. I'm like, how's it already purchased when it's not even on the site? It's not even listed. They was like, you know what kind of deal this is, and you know whose shit that is. So now they got people over there with that whole amalgamation of shit. They are removing the Celadon labels off of all the trailers, and they're putting their new company name on all the shit that they supposedly gave up in bankruptcy court. It's a boon for them.
Yeah. Say no more. We don't want to get flagged.
All right,
But
all right.
Yeah, yeah. But this is episode 136. So the CEO of the biggest mall owner in the US says he's nervous about more retail bankruptcies this year.
And when was this article published?
February 1st, 2019.
Okay.
The biggest mall owner in the US is warning of more store closures and even bankruptcies to rattle the retail industry in 2019. There are some retailers out there that we're nervous about. Simon Property Group CEO David Simon said Friday during a call with analysts after the company reported earnings, though he didn't name those companies. We are concerned about a few retail bankruptcies that could shake out in the first quarter. Simon, the largest mall owner in the US, has, like its peers, been grappling with how to deal with an onslaught of store closures from tenants big and small, ranging from Sears to Starbucks, Teavana. The real estate investment trust finds itself in an especially unique position with Sears bankruptcy in that it's also a member of an unsecured creditors committee, now arguing Sears can't be saved, as Sears chairman Eddie Lampert is still trying to salvage some 400 stores. This article is so old that the stores are gone now.
Yeah, all the way gone.
Yeah. So you have the CEO of the biggest mall saying he was worried at the time about these bankruptcies.
And this was February 2019, and he was worried. And now we are January 2020, and the stores are gone.
All the way gone. They're up for rent and lease, and no one's picking them up. No one has
that escalated. That escalated quickly.
Yeah, actually, some of these Sears retail stores, the brick and mortar up here, have been transferred into Five Below. I'm not sure what that retail brand is, and Party.
They're like, they're like Dollar General or Dollar Tree, or maybe like, they're like Dollar Tree, where their stuff costs a little bit more than $1, but they sell basically all the same stuff that a Dollar Tree sells. It's an upscale version of Dollar Tree, pretty much.
Okay.
Hey, let me I wanted to chime in real quick about Sears, right?
Yes, sir.
So I think last week I actually bought a shitload of Sears stock. It's
for a penny.
Yeah, I think it was like 13 cents. It's up to 17 cents now. But I don't know, man. I was doing some research on Sears and exactly what y'all talking about, man. You know, the backdoor deals and stuff like that. I think that it's a lot more to this Sears situation than we think. You know what I'm saying?
Sears couldn't restructure in time to deal with Amazon. That's just the That's
and the thing is that nobody's been publicly charged with anything, and since it's hard to figure out what went on with these companies unless there's actually an actual case study that Harvard Law kind of picks up and that they allow to be published. That's the things about things that happen like this.
So even with Sears, when I was doing some research before I made the investment, I had found that they still take big loans. Like people,
they do. Hell yeah, they do.
They still get money from the top shareholders and stuff. And I don't know. I think it's more to it. Like you said, Mike, I think they might be restructuring. They might be going to a smaller scale situation that they can find profit.
Look, the holdings of Sears, right? They're still held. You know, just because
that's what I'm saying.
A company goes out of business or goes bankrupt or something like that. MOT just talked about it with the trucking firm we won't mention. And it's no different than anything else. I mean, I don't know how many times I've known dudes who went out of business, but struck a deal with a buddy of theirs and was like, "Well, look, dude, I'll just buy you out and I'll bring you in as a partner." Did you really go out of business if you strike a deal like that? When you really think about it, you know.
And you know what, Complex? I didn't know that Sears owned Die Hard batteries.
Yeah, they own.
They sold Die Hard. Well, they sold Craftsman, right?
They sold it to China.
Yeah.
Well, they sold it to AutoZone. Die Hard got sold to AutoZone.
Yeah, but I'm saying Kenmore appliances and all that stuff got sold to China.
All that shit.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
But that's what I'm saying. Like this money is, and this capital is going. I don't know, man. I think it's more to the Sears holding situation.
Well, because they were trying to restructure it in time in hopes that more money would be coming in from an investment standpoint. The problem is they never, it never happened because everybody else was, hedging to invest that, shares would just fail and that Amazon would be coming in to take over.
Yeah,
Now, we talked about this last year, long before Amazon was even in the picture, before Jeff Bezos was even thought of.
We were talking about who would be a good candidate to snatch him up, and we threw. And of all the people we could come up with, Amazon was the number one, the number one candidate.
Yeah, who would be the whale to come in and save Sears? And it turned out
But
that
Amazon looked at it and like Amazon was really kicking around this kind of store idea. But they was gonna be picking up all like the old Kmart's and Sears, and they was like, we don't need that type of headache, and they just kept doing what they were doing. So they were a candidate to pick them up for a while.
Yeah. Let me look at these unemployment rate numbers. Non-farm payroll job growth ranged from a 0.4% decline in Vermont between November 2017 and November 2018 to a 3.8% increase in Nevada. So what we're looking at here is non-farm payroll job growth, right? In Minnesota, you only had 1.2%, right? The economy is so good, it's only at 1.2% in terms of payroll job growth outside of the non-farm sector. We're not seeing this massive 5.55, 6%, even matching that of the GDP. We're not seeing that. At least these numbers don't say that from Business Insider. Mississippi gross domestic product per capita of $37,979 in Q2 2018 was the lowest in the country. Mississippi, is basically a third world country in terms of.
I mean, it always has been since the Civil War, dude. It never recovered.
Mm-hmm.
Never recovered.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I mean, right now I'm looking at putting factory farms down there because it's so easy to do. Because it's a food desert. Because most of the people who quote unquote was farming, like they don't do nothing but corn and actual cotton down there. Like no one's actually tilling the fields like they're supposed to. So. Like the South is a premier place to be putting factory farming. I'm just saying.
Yeah.
It would be a great idea.
Corn has been a staple for them because niggas is corny.
Yeah. Niggas is corny.
That's pretty funny.
A lot of that corn getting turned into ethanol.
Yeah.
That's what the majority of corn grown here in the United States. It's for export.
Yeah, sugarcane as well are coming out of Brazil. So.
And also remember high fructose corn syrup.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
What up, Nago?
Yeah.
Happy New Year, big bro.
Go on, nigga.
What up, Nago? Hey, there is no debate.
Captain Derelict.
I've been waving that flag for you, bro.
Good, man. How you doing, man? There is no debate for 2020. There is no
debate.
It was just interesting. I was just listening to MOT talking about Mississippi and how it didn't recover from the Civil War. That's exactly right. They were the richest state in the Union.
Yes, they were.
They were the richest state in the Union before the Civil War, and it was King Cotton. King Cotton was like oil, and after a lot of land got raised, and landowners got torn out the frame from the war and all that. That was over. That was over. A lot of blacks left, even though still, just because of the cotton industry and the slavery that was there, it still has one of the I think next to Georgia one of the highest population of black people in the South. So the Mississippi Delta, that was a very profitable area and enterprise during the Civil War. But after the war, it definitely has not recovered. And that's a fact. I don't think a lot of people knew that was the richest state in the Union before the war. Yeah, it was.
Yeah. And so we look at the average weekly earnings of November 2018, and we see that even Minnesota is not doing that much better than North Dakota. So, if the economy is so well, why are you letting, a place like North Dakota outshine your state.
Hey, Mike, I just want to say this just to bring some reality here. We have not seen an overall growth in GDP over 3% since the Bush administration.
Right.
All right, and it's been going down ever since.
That's only because coming out of the Clinton administration, there was a surplus.
Yep.
Yes.
Yep. That's a fact. And that surplus went away very quickly in these wars.
Mm-hmm.
And what we've seen is a very, either stagnation or a very, very, very anemic type of growth. We've seen certain areas and certain segments of the economy have tremendous growth, like, for instance, technology and healthcare. But manufacturing and all the other big staples that we've had, we've seen tremendous decreases, even in our farming as well. So, I know a lot of us, say this economy's great. The economy's great. All right, it hasn't
For certain people.
Yeah, for certain people, and it hasn't fallen through the, it hasn't dropped. It hasn't fallen through the basement and gone all the way down. But we have. If we want to talk about this economy, we have to look at this thing realistically and look at its growth. When we start to look at that over the last 20 years, we've had very little growth and actually some levels of shrinkage. I just want to say that, and that might be a continuing factor if certain things are not done.
And to maybe clear up some confusion, man, we're talking about the national economy, not the hood economy.
Right. GDP, if you guys
yeah, domestic GDP, not hood GDP, and
HDP. Yeah.
HGP.
Right,
we ain't talking about that.
Yeah, this next one is episode 132. So I'm kind of jumping around because the way the tabs opened up, but I'm just pointing out the sources because the sources were requested last night, and said people did not want to actually delve too much into this on their own. They wanted us to quote the sources, and here we are quoting the sources.
Yep.
So the let me see, top 10 fastest growing. Yeah, top 10 fastest growing African economies.
Hey, Mike, real quick, I just make a quick point. Not only are we pointing these out, but I would also say it's very pertinent to actually listen to the live streams too. So the conversations give everything greater context. So you'll hear reoccurring points. Go ahead, Mike, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I'm not going to go over all of these, but
okay.
Article discusses fastest growing economies in on the continent and why everything's shifting from Western economic structure to Eastern economic structure. Everything is moving east, so that's why we included that on the docket, and we also included Africa's leadership in the next global context. They're having this discussion with Paul Kagame of Rwanda, and Ramaphosa of South Africa, who have some of the fastest growing economies on the continent. Everything is shifting east, as we were talking about. Rwanda, the first country on the continent to produce a smartphone.
Which we have invested in, by the way, which we have a working model in our possession. So just, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And so that's why this is on, we added that to the docket to add further emphasis that the World Economic Forum is having these discussions, panel discussions, like we were saying last night, that markets are shifting east from the west. All right, so let me jump to the next one real quick. I don't want to spend too much time on this. I just want to make my points. This is episode 128. Again, with the kind of jumping all over the place because of the way the tabs opened up. What a Whole Foods takeover of Sears would look like. We talked about that before. Sears reaches deal with Chairman Eddie Lampert to save company and roughly over 400 stores. That did not pan out very well.
That didn't pan out.
900. Actually, that's not the article I was looking for. Actually, top. Africa will have some of the world's fastest growing economies in 2019 and a looming debt crisis. So this is from quartz.com.
And what was the date stamp on that article?
It was January 13, 2019.
Okay.
So fastest growing economies, Ethiopia, Cote d'Ivoire, Rwanda, Senegal, Ghana, Benin, Kenya, Uganda, Burkina Faso, Guinea, and Tanzania. All of these countries have an index that is even greater than that of the United States, especially Rwanda, who just came out of a genocide 20 or 25 years ago. Unthinkable tragedies, but breakthrough in terms of economics. They're doing all the right things. All markets are shifting east. Again, we covered this at nauseam.
Was there anything else that we needed to kind of highlight as in context to the discussion, as far as other links that could be associated, maybe like political links or technological links or something?
Yeah, put political influences.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll get to it.
Okay.
I just want to make sure we go through every single live stream for 2019 that we had.
Gotcha.
All right, this is episode 175. What are we looking at here? You're right about that, Complex. The discussions that happen within the live stream is actually just as important, because we're adding perspectives, right?
Well, that's the reason why I kind of found it a bit disingenuous for the links just to simply be requested and not really actually delve into the context, because it wasn't just like we posted an article or something and just said, hey, look at this. There was discussion, we read it, and then we discuss it in a greater context, kind of put everything together. That's why I was just like, well, you're gonna have to dig through the catalog. I even told some brothers on Ramil's channel yesterday, same thing. I'm like, look, dude, there's over 400 live streams, dude. Like, get to work.
Hey, Mike, you got Dr. Fee Jack with his hand up.
Oh, okay. Thanks. Triz sound like he had a long night, man.
Yeah, that's Triz?
Yeah.
Triz was at Metro last night. That's where he was.
I had a long night, but I wasn't at Metro. I tell you
He's
that.
at Meadaho. He's at Meadaho.
He must have slept in the back of his Forerunner.
It was at a very extensive Bible study session.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. I believe you. I believe you, fam.
That must have been a good baptism.
All
right, this one is from episode 171, and The Economist. So the source of The Economist: black and white wealth gap is unchanged after half a century. Few Americans remember Greenwood, a once prosperous African-American neighborhood in Tulsa, Oklahoma that was known as Black Wall Street. In 1921, Dick Rowland, a black shoe shiner, was charged with attempting to rape a white Lyft girl in a downtown office building. An incensed white mob gathered at the courthouse to lynch him, then proceeded to Greenwood for 2 days of rioting, looting, and murder. City officials aided and abetted the violence. In the end, 35 blocks were destroyed, 10,000 black people were made homeless, as many as 300 were killed. Residents reported aeroplanes flying overhead. So these were the biplanes back then, from the Wright brothers, dropping explosives. So they were throwing TNT outside of the planes. American history is replete with horrific episodes that prevented the accumulation of Black wealth for centuries. First slavery, then indentured servitude under Jim Crow, segregated housing and schooling, seizure of property, and racial discrimination. The result was that in 1962, 2 years before the passage of landmark civil rights legislation and the Great Society program, the average wealth of white households was 7 times greater than that of Black households. Yet, after decades of decline and discrimination and the construction of a modern welfare state, the ratio remains the same. The mean of Black household wealth is $138,200 for whites. That number is $933,700. So I probably should have got a subscription to The Economist to actually read this whole entire thing. But the point of the matter here was that we were discussing this sort of unchanged challenge that most Black people were suffering from in 2019, that they're still having this problem. In places like Mississippi that are basically on the fringe of being a third world country, similar to that of many Latin American countries, you can't say you have a great economy with third world country. Most of the poverty is happening along the along the Bible Belt. And Black people are heavily concentrated in these areas as well. So that's why we had that discussion.
And that says a whole lot when you look at it in contrast to the general homelessness problem that you see in a lot of the large major metros, like Los Angeles, San Francisco, New York, right? And they ain't even, they're not even in the South along the Bible Belt, right? See, so it kind of gives like the economic picture greater context when we look at it, right? So outside of those places that you just mentioned, you still have a very serious homelessness problem, which would indicate that things aren't exactly all peaches and cream when it comes to the economic situation here.
Well, I think the homeless issue is something that is not discussed widely. I don't think Black people understand the true depth of it. And in relation to these Bible belts, I mean, earlier in the summer, I had spoke about my going to Louisiana and what that was like. And again, most of Louisiana, once you get outside of maybe Shreveport, and New Orleans, I wouldn't even count Baton Rouge, because the only thing in Baton Rouge really is LSU and Southern. I mean, once you're outside of those 3 cities, for the most part, I mean, it's pretty much third world. I mean, people have to travel quite a distance. Even when I was in Baton Rouge, for instance, I mean, just to get to the nearest hospital, I mean, it was probably a good 10, 15 miles. So they had a bunch of urgent care centers like nearby. There's probably at least 3 or 4 urgent care centers, because there's like no real hospital access for miles.
Well, I just want to say, if you really want to talk about, dealing with this problem, which is going to increase, you got to first recognize that you have this problem and really, start to talk with it and deal with it. You've got the ignorant telling the uninformed what's going on. And that's the problem. That's the problem. You got to have people who really know what the situation is on the ground and talk to you very realistically about what's happening. And this Black male homelessness problem is big all around the country. LA is such a well-known area. It's a big blue state. We're supposed to have X, Y, and Z, and these X, Y, and Z wealthy people and all this going on. And you've got, you've got a shanty town in there that looks, akin to some of the worst favelas that I've seen in all of Brazil. And I'm sitting there saying, well, what is this? This is America. This is going on across the board. All right.
Well, it's not even just these major metros. I mean, it's even these medium-sized.
It's these medium-sized ones. And I'm just even, and I'm talking about, I'm just saying this is going on across the board, and you've got the ignorant out here, blah, 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 talking, shooting their fucking ignorant ass mouths off, don't know shit, but yet they're telling yet they're telling people who are misinformed what's going on. The misinformed don't know what's happening. And see, you know what I'm saying? And this has got to change. And black male employment is going to be a problem. And we're not going to solve that issue until we start truly beginning to employ ourselves and make jobs for ourselves. That means really shoring up our institutions. I'll get into that later, but that's what we really have to really start to look at. But this is a problem and it's going to increase. Go ahead, Mike.
Yeah, let me jump to this next one from episode 165. Feds controlled demolition economy almost complete. So this is from Zero Hedge. It's a credible source. The Federal Reserve is an often misunderstood entity, not only in the mainstream, but also in alternative economic circles. There is this ever-pervasive fantasy on both sides of the divide that the central bank actually cares about forever protecting the U.S. economy, or at least propping up the U.S. economy in an endless game of kick the can. While this might be true at times, it is not true all the time. Things change or agendas change, and sometimes the Fed's goal is to not maintain the economy, but to destroy it. So this is actually, what the hell is this? This was actually posted March 28th, 2019. So QE, quantitative easing, played a significant role into this, where they basically economic attrition to its domestic economy. In fact, I'm not exactly sure how anyone can claim with a straight face that the Fed has given up on quantitative tightening. So although they throw, water on the fire, they're actually just urinating on the fire, and it's not really going anywhere other than getting a burnt tip at the freedom. So.
But Mike, you're not even 80, so what do you know?
Oh yeah. I forgot about that person.
Yeah. We're gonna get to that one though.
Chop his head off too. Metaphorically speaking. This one is from Economics episode 161. Let me see if I can find. Student debt drags economy down.
That's nothing new.
Yeah, the real college crisis, student debt drags the down economy. The net impact is not only a drag in people's personal finance situation, but it's also a drag on the economy as a whole. If the economy is doing great, you don't have this sort of problem. You don't have cars being repossessed within 90 days. With the other article, and I think we might get to it in a few minutes, cars being repoed at 45 days. Delinquencies. You drove it off the lot. By the time you put it in your driveway, there was a repo man sitting outside waiting for you. Give me the keys or I'm pulling this bastard back to the dealership. So that's one article discussing the economy that we were discussing about its state, its health. Let me pull up another one real quick.
In related context, because of that, millennials really aren't prime candidates to buy vehicles. Millennials also aren't exactly prime candidates to purchase property. And this is why you have what we've talked about at length, a burgeoning sharing economy, right? Versus people who are basically bought into the traditional economy as we know it, home ownership, vehicle purchases, and all that. So you have you have a shift, as MOT was referring to earlier, right? When we were talking about specifically relating to trucking, but in this venue here, we're also talking about a shift in economies, how economies are how we're in the middle of a shift to how economies will now be functioning a specific way that runs counter to what you have now.
Harley Davidson having difficult financial quarters quarter over quarter because they can't generate new buyers because millennials can't afford to buy it and they're not even interested in their bikes.
They're not even interested in the shit.
Yeah.
Dude, the used Harley market, the used market is flooded with bikes. Yep. How are you gonna sell new ones?
Yeah. This one is from the New York Post. More than a third of New Yorkers say they can't afford to live here. New Yorkers are getting out. We just talked to somebody on MOT's panel last night, Timothy, who said he's getting out of New York once he finishes school. Same thing with Zoe Royalty, who's a member of the Black Brain Trust. Once he finishes medical school, he's gone.
Yeah, I mean, the rents up here are ridiculous. Most guys that I know, most brothers that I know who live here, I'm not even talking about. We're not talking about Midtown Manhattan, of which is unaffordable for most people, let alone Black folks. But we're talking about the outlying areas. You Brooklyn and the Bronx and so forth. If you can find an apartment, 1 bedroom for $1,500, $1,500 a month, that is like you've literally hit the lottery. I mean, you've literally hit the lottery, bro. The lottery. So it's bad news. It's bad news.
Yeah.
It's bad. But what we pay for mortgages over here, this is what people are paying for rents.
Yeah.
And, crazy.
Yeah, here it is right here. A lot of my friends had to move to Florida, Texas, Oregon. What did the brother say last night on Man of Tomorrow's live stream? He's thinking about moving to Dallas.
Yeah.
Hey, let me tell you something.
Let me finish this paragraph real quick. You go to your local shop and it's $5 for a gallon of milk, $13 for shampoo. Do you know how much a 1 bedroom, 1 bath apartment is? $1,700. What's wrong with this picture? New Yorkers are bullshit about this, about the economy, but people will tell you that the American economy is doing great. Go ahead, Tassi.
The smaller house that I own that I just moved back into is the mortgage with insurance and everything included is $1,200 a month.
I mean, here in New York, that's pretty cheap. All right, that's pretty cheap. I didn't want to get into my monthly expenses. That's pretty cheap.
But that's okay, what I'm saying. I'm not even that far from the
Well,
Texas.
you're not paying $2,000, Nugon, so I think you're good.
I'll say that again.
You're not paying over $2,000, hopefully.
Say what?
Well, I hope you're not paying over $2,000 for if you have a home and all that, like over.
Say what?
Wait, I'm sorry. Could you repeat that?
No, say if you're not paying like what he's paying, it's not like over $2,000 or.
Wait.
Say
Huh?
what?
Never mind.
If he just said a 1 bedroom is $1,700, how much you think he is?
What you think he's paying for a house?
Yo, man, dude, don't come here, bro. Don't come here. But as I'm saying, this shit is out of control in a lot of places. Here in this tri-state area in New York, especially within the a good 80-mile. People say the 90-mile radius. Shit, I call it more of a 100-mile radius, really, because everything is getting even more expensive as you move out further. Things are actually starting to increase a lot more. Shit's getting expensive. Shit's getting mad expensive, dude. Like I said, if you are able to find a 1 bedroom, $1,500 a month, I'm talking the Bronx, Brooklyn, and Queens in these outlying areas, you've hit the lottery.
Well, I got some buddies that live in like Soho, man, and I'm telling you right now, they were getting hit up for damn near $3,000.
Yeah, I mean, and that's standard, bro.
Yes,
yeah. Standard. That's the going rate. That's standard.
Yeah.
That's why you have guys in these lofts and stuff, and they got 4 or 5 of them in there. I mean, it is what it is.
I mean, I could tell you even right now, even in Chicago, that's exactly what's happening. That's why you see this consistently shrinking Black population in Chicago. Places that, maybe about 10, 15 years ago were somewhat reasonably affordable. They're pretty much out of range for the average Black renter, for example, in Chicago. So I mean, what was that?
Chicago is unique, as is Dallas and a lot of places in Houston, in that you have exorbitantly high property tax.
Oh yeah.
In addition to some of the taxes
exactly.
that you face in, so like even Thai City, like when he say he paid $1,200 a month, that's a lot of money considering the actual value of the property that you have. Because okay, let me give you an example, right? When I was looking at buying properties, if I were to get a property in Texas, right, versus the property that I got here in Seattle, I was able to qualify for a property that was $200,000 more because I bought it in Washington. Now make that, now I want you to let that sink in. I qualified for $200,000 more because the property taxes is that much lower in Washington, or actually, let me say this, the property taxes are that much higher in Texas.
Yeah, no,
Texas has some of the highest property taxes in the nation. So that's something to think about too. People are like, oh, it's cheaper to live out here, but then you start thinking about,
Man, read the fine print. Read the fine print. Y'all got toll roads all over the damn. My mom lived there, so she told me firsthand. She was a bank manager, right? So she could tell. She told me firsthand, and she's like, yeah, they'll, the allure is that there's no income tax. It's cheap to live, but
in Texas, it depends on what area you're in.
She was over. She was in Louisville area, like right outside of Dallas.
Right.
Yeah, I would say in Chicago when I was living in one of the most expensive neighborhoods in the city, and I'm telling you outright, the folks that I know that owned like condos and homes in those areas, they were paying outrageous amounts in real estate taxes. So I mean, Chicago in general has always historically been known for its high tax rates, whether it's the state's tax and as well as the city's tax, and the real estate tax. So I mean, they're just off the chart. I mean, homes that you can find in like Dallas, Dallas or something like that, or some of these outlying areas in Dallas, for example, in Chicago, they're going to be twice as much just because of the taxes.
Yeah, I mean, that's why they call it Illinois.
So yeah, so I mean, people been running for the, Black folks been running for the hills for a number of years now in Chicago. That's why that was that article you did a few months back, Mike, where you was talking about folks moving to Atlanta and stuff like that because again, tax rates are lower, and so people are able to qualify, for homes that are generally either same size or even larger for cheaper rates.
Yeah, this article is from episode 190. Africa following in footsteps of Europe, Asia to industrialization. So this is April 29th, 2019. So African industrialization has to be among the most important things that happen in the world right now. So again, market shift and needs. The vast continent with a population of more than 1.2 billion people is home to an increasing fraction of people who are still mired in extreme poverty. But by 2030, the World Bank projects that almost all of the people in extreme poverty will live in sub-Saharan Africa. The reason is twofold. First, Africa's population is growing rapidly. Second, Africa has lagged in industrialization necessary to generate mass employment. The lack of strong, stable governments, a legacy of colonialism, has made it difficult to provide the education, infrastructure, court systems, and other public goods that will help prepare countries for the leap from subsistence farming to factory work. Well-meaning Western aid and international development agencies couldn't fill the gap. Meanwhile, nations in East Asia and Southeast Asia became the world's factories before Africa did. But late doesn't mean never. Rising labor costs in China and the threat of US tariffs are finally causing manufacturers to diversify their supply chains. Some of their factories will go to Vietnam and Bangladesh, two rising stars of the developing world. But those countries won't be big enough to replace China, which means that if manufacturers really want to keep costs down, many will have to look to Africa. So markets are shifting east. And I talked about this last night that when China and the rest of the countries cannot fulfill the last mile, it will shift to Africa. And you're seeing this right now. This is what this article is talking about. Industrialization in Africa is going to happen over the next 10 years. So by 2030, you'll start to see a lot of that manual labor be shifted over and be somewhat hybridized through cobots, right? Robotic arms that will come out and help assist some of the factory workers. So Africa won't be hit by automation in the same way because it's such a proprietary landscape and environment. It's not going to have that sort of immediate impact. Maybe 2045, 2050, 2060. They have a 2060 agenda, Africa 2060. If you look that up, that's what we've been talking about on here is market shifting east, and not just shifting east, but shipping back to global south, which is the continent.
Which is why we push for brothers to be global minded. This is why we say, in all actuality, the roadmap to success in our view for ADOS is to become global minded, become globalized.
Yep. All right, this one from CNBC.com. Stephen Moore says the decline in male earnings is a big issue for the economy. This is from April 30th, 2019. The drop in earnings for men is the biggest challenge facing the economy, according to Stephen Moore. The man, President Donald Trump, has said he wants to nominate to the Federal Reserve Board. Speaking Tuesday with CNBC Squawk Box, Moore faced questions about past writings, some of which has been classified as sexist by his detractors. The biggest problem I see in the economy over the last 25 years is what has happened to male earnings for Black males and white males as well. So they're being specific now. Moore said they've been declining. That is, I think, a big problem. I want everybody's wages to rise. Of course, people are talking about women's earnings. They've risen, he added. Since 2010, real median weekly earnings for men have risen about 2.1%, according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics. Women's real earnings have gone up 3.9% during the period. The problem actually has been the steady decline in male earnings, and I think we should pay attention to that because I think that has very negative consequences for the economy and for society, he said. So Black male earnings on the decline over the last, 9 years since 2010 have severely impacted the Black community as a whole, as well as the Black family. So we talked about this. You can't say that America has this great, vast economy when you have white men and Black men also having declines in income.
And a robust employment market,
right,
to boot.
Moore has not yet been officially nominated for Fed governor, a post that carries a 14-year term. So we talked about this. This is in April 30th, 2019. So we're talking about the decline in market and how it impacts Black men. We covered an article just last week about how automation is going to impact Black men.
Well, I think it needs to be said too when you discuss the unemployment issues among Black society. You know, you go to pretty much any major city, and you have at least 50% unemployment rate, and that's usually among Black males. When we're talking about unemployment in Black society, we're generally talking about Black males. We're not really even talking about Black women.
Yep.
So I mean, this goes without saying.
Yep.
You know, lots of, even the articles you guys read over the last few months, you got brothers that have went to, Ivy League schools that are homeless on Skid Row in LA.
Yep.
Because they've been unemployed for whatever reason.
Yep. And there's the next one from Jalopnik. Unsold new cars overflowing in empty shopping centers and fields. Dealerships have too many cars. Volkswagen is planning its pickup truck offensive. Chinese EV startup NIO is making a splash, and questions about how to profit from autonomous cars. All of this and more. First gear, too many cars. We saw last week that lots of automakers are going through slumping sales as global demand weakens. Now, Automotive News has a story about ballooning vehicle inventories around the U.S. It seems that there are simply too many cars currently for sale on dealer lots, and that's a problem for automakers and dealers alike. So we talked about just a few, probably about 30 minutes ago, the impact of delinquencies in new vehicles for people below the age of 30, millennials. And now they have too many cars on the lots itself that they're filling up these shop malls. I know this when I'm in Boston, I see Toyota Expressway parking their cars in these little enclaves because there's just not enough cars. Just not enough space on their lots, regardless of how much they've restructured. They're using the Plaza Mall to park their cars in because they don't have enough space because those malls have closed down themselves. They've gone out of business themselves. So there's a lot of empty space.
Mike, all those cars being sold and then flying back, that was the next phase in the in kind of like the banking scam hustle. I'm saying that, you know, you had the banking scam, which they were part of the stock market hustle as well. We saw what happened with the banks. And when I say the bank scams, I'm talking about them doing those bullshit loans that they pulled off with the housing market. And that same model was applied to cars. So since they couldn't do it with houses, the next game was the cars. People predicted that. They were predicting that back in 2011. And you know, and then here we're seeing it right now, you know, and here it is. So they went in with the same model, you know. So the whole you know aspect of moral hazard and all that. These guys didn't learn shit. It's the same thing. So that's what you're saying. You're saying another part of that, which is also endemic of the economy, where the economy is and how and where things really are as well. So that's what we're looking at. You know, no one wants to talk about that for real. No one wants to look at that for what it is, and that's why we're seeing what we're seeing. But once again, you know, the ignorant, you know, we're trying to tell the uninformed what's going on, and that's why you've got all this bullshit going on. But you know, just keep dropping the facts there, Mike. All right, I just wanted to break that down.
Let me get this last piece. Fourth gear. How do you make money off autonomous cars? Well, according to some people in the manosphere, there will be no autonomous cars. I saw a debate on Ramil's live stream last night between Complex and another gentleman who was in denial and even denied Thai City the ability to speak on it. Autonomous cars are all.
Oh, and shout out to Preem too. Yeah.
Anyone's talking about right now, which with discussions usually centered around technical, ethical, and political feasibility. But what about the basic question of profitability, particularly when it comes to self-driving commercial fleets, which are likely to be among the first applications of autonomous cars? The Detroit News tackles this topic in the news story writing, but it's still unclear what those commercial services might look like. Leaders like General Motors Corporation, GM's Cruise LLC, Alphabet Inc.'s Waymo LLC appeared focused on ride-hailing services, looking to mirror the success of Uber and Lyft without the added cost of human drivers. Others, like Ford Motor Co., are more concentrated on delivery and e-commerce. Ford's plans to manage these business uncertainty is to hedge bets. Our work with companies like Postmates and Walmart is helping us figure out which segments autonomous vehicles really work for. We're thinking about a strategy that makes sure we're reaching full utilization of vehicles. GM too, the story mentions, is starting to work with DoorDash. So people were saying,
oh God.
Yeah, people were saying that this is not going to happen. You guys don't know what you're talking about. You're doom and gloom. You're selling us fear porn and bukakis and things like that. Financial dom game. Nah, this is us quoting the articles. We just call it the way we see it. We just call it the way we see it, man. Unemployment hits 49-year low as U.S. employers step up hiring. Yeah, these seasonal jobs. Yeah, that's good. Walmart, Macy's, those retail stores that between November, October 31st, and then January 31st. Yeah, that's cool that they hired a lot of people, but that was just for the quarter.
And then back in the spring, and then fast forward to the spring. So for Q1, you want to start hiring.
So by the time May, June rolls around, we'll see those numbers dip again.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. All right. This one's from Economics 184. Let me see if I can pull up one of the articles.
Hey, Mike, and real quick, to speak to that point you were talking about with the autonomous vehicles. See, what people don't, what you guys gotta understand is, man, a lot of shit that's going on here, this is business to business. I keep trying to hammer this shit, dude. We report on industrial trends and how it will affect our lives. So we're looking at the larger macro, and that involves, large companies that deploy a lot of, technology that you use on a daily basis. To say that what that what Mike just read was mere speculation would deny the existence of companies like Uber and Lyft and how much they've eaten into the traditional automotive market.
Yeah.
Dollars and cents here, man.
Yeah, I mean, even if Uber or Lyft went away, the problem is that they forever change the market. So
Well,
there's
that's the whole
always,
thing. They're look, they're never gonna, it's called a disruptive technology.
yeah,
It's a mainstay now. That means that it's become a normality. It's a way people get around. Micro transportation. That's another thing. Shout out to Preem because he thinks it's a fad. Oh,
Yeah.
really?
now everyone that's ever been to Atlanta, you know, they have the carpooling lanes. So I mean, this stuff is not going nowhere. I mean, even in
Well,
my city, they have all these.
also let's not forget about cars to go. So you have yet another facet for people. You know that you don't have to own a vehicle in certain cities like Seattle. You don't have to own a vehicle out here.
Mhm.
You have Uber, you have Lyft, and you have cars to go.
Yeah.
And then the cars to go, they incentivize it by allowing you to park in areas that you normally would have to pay to park. If you have a cars to go rental, you don't have to pay to park in these metered areas.
Yeah. Zip cars as well. Zip cars as well.
Yeah, zip cars. There you go.
Yeah.
Look,
Yeah, I mean,
if you have these
that's
options,
exactly the case.
if you have these
Even-
options on the table, what incentive do you have to actually go and purchase a vehicle?
Yeah, I mean, that's exactly the case. Even in Chicago, I mean, when I was living in Chicago, I didn't years ago, I didn't have a car.
Yeah. I thought you had the
I
Infinity.
didn't have a car because you didn't need it.
I thought you
And
had the
two, because it was just, I mean, if you lived in an apartment and you had a car, you had to pay for it because you generally had to get parking as a separate expense. You know, it wasn't tied into your rent. I mean, most places I knew were charging minimum $200 on top of your rent just for parking a month.
Yep.
So I
Yeah.
mean, so it was much more efficient because they usually have the zip cars near the train station or some type of bus line or something like that, where you can just park and go, or if you want, or do whatever you wanted to do.
Yeah. Let me get to this next one real quick. This one's from Bloomberg.com. Are we ready for the next recession? Theme of the week. It has been 10 years since the last recession, and the U.S. has managed to maintain a slow but steady recovery, but the next downturn can bring it all crashing down at any time. In a series of columns, Bloomberg Opinions, writers are tackling one big question. When the next recession strikes, what can the world's central banks do? So there's an array of articles that highlight a looming recession happening for 2020. This was written in April 21st, 2019. So again, we're just posting the articles and giving our analysis. Bed Bath & Beyond to close 40 stores. Another one of the major retailers. Retail apocalypse. This is from MSN, Microsoft Money site. Retail apocalypse now, and analysts say 75,000 more U.S. stores could be doomed. This is April 11th, 2019. Widespread closures have roiled the retail industry, but many stores are likely to shut down in coming years to keep up with shift to online shopping, according to a report by investment from UBS. An estimated 75,000 stores that sell clothing, electronics, and furniture will close by 2026, when online shopping is expected to make 25% of retail sales, according to UBS. The only reason that this is happening, right, slow adoption to the online platforms, is because the taxation is really has been really convoluted, right? Before, nobody was paying taxes online, they would just buy their stuff online and not pay any taxes, and so it made sense for smaller businesses to do business online, but when you were a big retailer, you had to account for a lot of your state taxes. And a lot of these online retailers and brick and mortars were confused about all of this. And so that's why it was such slow transition. But now they're saying by 2026, because they figured out the taxation problem from a state perspective. So even if you are in Wisconsin, you buy something from Massachusetts, you pay the Massachusetts state tax. Or the Wisconsin state tax.
You know, it's ironic you said that because I've had an Amazon Prime account for over 10 years, and that's pretty much the only place I shop at for the most part. I hardly ever walk into a traditional brick and mortar store. I haven't been in one, really been in one in probably almost 10 years now. So, I mean, And I knew in those early days of Amazon Prime, you didn't pay tax, so you could buy stuff pretty much anywhere. And
It was like that with eBay. Everybody would just buy stuff right out of eBay, not paying any taxes. And
Yeah.
you get orders from Amazon Prime too?
Yeah, it was the exact same thing because a lot of people, you can do a lot of, you can buy from a lot of private sellers, you can buy from a lot of smaller, companies, whatever. You never paid any taxes. Now, depending on what you buy, you can pay taxes depending on where it's shipped from or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But in the early days, man, you never paid on anything. You never paid taxes on nothing. So.
Yeah. Let me read this last paragraph. Overall, retailers have closed more than 15,000 stores since 2017, according to UBS. Among them, Radio Shack, Toys R Us, Mattress Firm, and GNC. Mattress Firm. People aren't even sleeping on mattresses anymore. They sleep on the floor. That's how ill it is now.
Ew.
These cats sleeping on air mattresses.
Oh yeah. Well, Mattress Firm can't stay open if people are sleeping on not box springs, but what do you call pallet jacks and stuff like that. Pallets and stuff like that. It's ill. So we see the shift happening. I mean, people are saying the pace of the store productivity improvement is unlikely to be sustained in 2019 as the boost from fiscal stimulus fades. They can't sustain themselves. This will likely lead to an acceleration in physical store closures in the upcoming year. This was in 2019, this was written. So again, we call it the way we see it.
No chaser.
Yeah, looks like some receipts. Looks like some receipts have been have been laid down here.
Oh, we got more. We got a whole bunch.
Yeah.
Well, I think this is when you look at some of your traditional stores, like like the Best Buys. I mean, everyone remember back in the early 2000s, you had was it Circuit City? They went out of business. I mean, Best Buy has gotten completely destroyed by Amazon. I mean, I don't buy anything from Best Buy. I haven't bought anything from Best Buy since the early 2000s maybe. Because again, I don't buy computers. I just go directly to the vendors, or you can go directly to the Microsoft site because they give you like a hell of a discount if you're like a student or you're an educator.
I got a Best Buy by my house, so down on Central Avenue. So we you can go over there, get some nice flat screens and stuff over there. So I mean, they do have some decent stuff. But then again, I saw some nice flat screen TVs being sold in Costco as well, which I was like, what?
What's keeping Best Buy relevant is they have technicians.
That is true.
You can bring stuff into a Best Buy and get it fixed. You know what I'm saying? They have contracts with like Apple and stuff like that. So I think Best Buy has really. They've been smart about this transition, and that's what. Look, they had to shut some stores down, but they're not all shut down. Like they had to really just kind of trim. Go ahead, Mike.
No, I was going to say that they had already been in talks about bringing in electric vehicles.
Then there was that whole part too. Yes.
To sell electric vehicles inside their stores.
Inside. Yep.
Floor space, 25,000 square feet, but nothing is really moving. They're paying 30 or 35 grand a month in rent. With a profit. So commercial real estate is hurting them big time, especially in the slow seasons. So here's another one from inc.com. More than 30 million Americans are underbanked. This Mississippi millennial is trying to change that. So underbanking, what does that mean? Meaning that they are relying on, checks cash, Western Union, other financial reptiles to come in.
Cash app.
To come in and do their banking for them. And unfortunately, they cannot maintain their bank account because they don't earn enough. But people will tell you that the economy is doing great. It is doing wonderful. Ask the Black men who are declining wages, like we read about a couple of articles ago. White men and Black men declining wages, declining incomes, hurting your economy, hurting the Black economy.
Hey, Mike, you know many guys I know here in New York who work in 2 and 3 jobs. Mm-hmm. We're doing the security stuff, and I've got a couple of guys. They're coming in and they're cranking. I mean, they got other jobs, real jobs, and they're trying to hit weekend hours and being in stores and all that, working for 15, 18 bucks an hour. And these guys are working 10, 12 hours a day. These guys are working 60, 70 hours a week. Just to get live. And then they have, and they'll have, you know, a wife and a kid, and their asses ain't even home. And so that's when I sit back and I listen to all of this crap that I hear from these other people around talking craziness. I know that's just not true when my feet are on the ground here. And I see what's going on. And it's a lot of people gigging, man. A lot of people are gigging to make it. It's a lot of people gigging.
Back in the day, gigging would be a dance. Now it's actually a hustle.
No. It's real hustle, and we ain't talking about doing the hustle. We talking about really.
Go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, I mean, if you were to truly do a micro analysis of the economy, just focusing specifically on the Black population, I mean, we would see that Black society as a collective is in big trouble here. I mean, you go to pretty much any Black neighborhood, for the most part, you don't really see banking institutions. You see these check cashing places, you know, payday lenders, whatever the case may be. So I mean, this is, I mean, as much as folks think that Black folks are okay, you know, I think if you were to do a micro analysis of the economies in Black neighborhoods in various cities, you will see that's really not the case.
You know, that's very true. And I was talking with my man Doc over at my bank, and he's a good friend of mine. I've known him a good while, and this is with Carver. It's a Black bank, and he hit me with some fairly devastating figures. And gentlemen, I was talking with Mike about it earlier, and I'll just tell you what some of this issue is. And see, this goes into a much deeper conversation. Out of every $10,000 that's deposited into the banking system here in this country, out of every $10,000, and I'm talking across the board, only 4 of those dollars go into Black banking institutions. Only 4 of those dollars go in there. So even Black people who where we have well over $100 billion deposited in the banking system that we have, only 2% of that is going into the Black banking system. Now, let me explain something to you very, very quickly. So we'll bring this into crystal clarity. You can't have Black-owned business. You can't have Black-owned homes or anything, or a Black community, if you want to talk about the community, with no money being put into your Black banking system, because the banking.
You have no way to hedge off gentrification.
Well, it's not only that, but you see, you can't get loan. You don't have loans. Banks make money on loans, so they're supposed to loan the small and medium-sized business. They're supposed to loan to them. You can't do that, and to return that creates employment. And I'm talking with bankers now. I'm butterlade dudes who are nuts deep in this game. And we're sitting here talking about that, and he's explaining to me what some of the big community issues are. And we had that conversation. I'm just telling you, this is a much deeper conversation. But when the institutions are very important, and the issues, and if we're going to solve this Black unemployment problem, of which is going to get a lot worse. I wanted to just a lot worse if we don't start to make some moves on it. 2053, people think this is a joke, but this is what's going on. People are talking out the side of their necks, and they don't know what's going on. They haven't looked at this thing the way they need to look at it. And me, I'm a hardcore realist, and I'm looking at this thing exactly what it is.
Well,
at my
absolutely.
age, I ain't got time to be playing games.
Yeah,
anyway,
I just wanted to speak to that. When I say it staves off gentrification, like the reason why I wanted to mention
that's correct. You're right about that.
And the reason why I wanted to mention it is because, again, I want to counter this fucking doom and gloom shit that keeps getting tossed our way. Fuck that. I'm rejecting it wholesale, because look, what you just talked about, this is a practical means of staving that shit off. If you have Black institutions, right, not only lending to Black businesses in the community, I'm sorry, I slipped up there, and also lending to home buyers, then that means that those homes are essentially backed by a Black institution. See, so other people really can't come in, right? They can't really. It's like an added layer of protection. And so these are very practical things that we're talking about here. That's why I got to push back on this doom and gloom shit. It's like, no. It's only doom and gloom if motherfuckers want to remain right where they're at. If you want to stay right where the fuck you're at and not adjust and adapt to the changing times, then you know what? You goddamn right. It is doom and gloom for your ass.
But complex. The thing that has to be explained is folks have to look at things realistically. If you've got brain cancer, which is operable, let's just say, and you start seeing flashing lights and start hearing all different kind of sounds, and you stand next to the person next to you and you say, "Did you hear that?" And they're like, "No, I didn't hear that shit. I don't see no flashing going on." But you're the only one who does. There's a problem. You got to look at this thing here. You got to look at this thing now. You got to deal with that. That's the reality.
Let me get to this next article.
That's what's going on. Got to be real about this. And okay, Mike, go ahead, man. I'm sorry.
All right, this one is from episode 214. Reuters, U.S. auto sales seen slipping 2.1% in May. JD Power. So U.S. auto sales are expected to drop 2.1% in May from a year ago period, as higher prices keep buyers at bay, according to industry consultants JD Power and LMC Automotive. The consultancy see total U.S. vehicle sales of about 1.56 million units in the month, with retail sales of new vehicles expected to drop 3.1% to 1.2 million units. Higher prices have led to soft demand for new vehicles, outweighing the strong economy and record high consumer sentiment that otherwise should boost growth in auto sales. So we know that millennials are not able to buy these, millennials who buy these vehicles are having them repossessed within 90 days because they can't afford to maintain them. They can't afford to keep it balanced in the bank. They don't have a savings. If your economy is doing good, you don't have these sort of issues. Delinquencies at that rate, slipping sales. We just covered an article earlier, millions of cars sitting on lots, unsold.
That doesn't suggest a healthy, robust economy. I'm sorry.
No. Let me jump through these because I think we got a heck of a lot.
Good. Go ahead.
All right, this is episode 210. Trump gives $16 billion to farmers.
And I was just speaking to the subsidy shit on Ramil's stuff yesterday. So
President Trump on Thursday unveiled this is from May 23rd, 2019. Thursday unveiled a $16 billion bailout for farmers hurt by his trade war with Beijing, signaling a protracted fight ahead that is already prompting some American companies to shift business away from China. Mr. Trump, flanked by farmers and ranchers in cowboy hats during remarks at the White House, said China had taken advantage of the United States for too long and vowed to protect an industry that has been used as a vehicle by Beijing to hurt America's economy. Farmers have been attacked by China, Mr. Trump said, adding that if the United States is in the trade war, we're winning it big. Yeah, right. That's why you give $16 billion in aid to your farmers, because somehow, some way, the economy is doing so well. In fact, the S&P 500 at the time falling 1.2%. American crude oil prices were down more than 5% amid growing concern that the trade war would start to drag on global economic demand. So again, farmers, waiting for their UBI to come in at $16 billion. A farmer's UBI, imagine that.
I just told these dudes yesterday that shit.
Yeah.
I'm sure they didn't want. I didn't hear that.
Oh my
but
God.
I'm sure they didn't want to hear it. I'm sure they didn't want to hear it.
Oh shit. Oh my God.
I'm sure they didn't want to hear that.
Yeah.
These are the realities on the ground, man. These are the realities on the ground. They're tough. I know people. I understand why people don't want to hear it. I understand it. Hardcore reality is tough.
Yo, this is from Bloomberg. Mike, what you say? Hey, look, man, we just pulled from the articles, fam.
Ford slashes 7,000 jobs as sweeping disruption hits automakers. This is from May 20th, 2019. Ford Motor Co. plans to eliminate about 7,000 salary jobs, about 10% of its global white-collar workforce. Mayonnaise boys getting torn out the frame. As pressure mounts on automakers to keep pace with massive technological shifts, amid signs global car demand has peaked. Eliminating the positions will save Ford about $600 million a year. Chief Executive Officer Jim Hackett wrote in a memo to employees Monday, 7 months after the company informed employees of a salary workforce redesign. The majority of the cuts will be completed by May 24th in North America, and by the end of August in markets including Europe, China, and South America. To succeed in our competitive industry and position Ford to win in a fast-changing future, we must reduce bureaucracy, empower managers, speed decision-making, focus on the most valuable work, and cut costs. Hackett wrote, Ford is a family company. Saying goodbye to colleagues is difficult and emotional. Oh, boo-hoo. Ford shares briefly moved higher before the start of the irregular trading, but we're down 0.3%. So Ford cutting these jobs due to technological changes, right? Technological, i.e. automation, has come in to remove a lot of these jobs.
So where's the replacement job at?
Well, for every job, automation takes away, 3 more jobs are created. I'm not seeing it. Somebody should go ask these Ford employees in unemployment lines waiting for their severance for involuntary separation, because automation just replaced their jobs. They don't really need these people.
Or more poignant, they should actually maybe go talk to the people who are actually striking right now against GM over the very same thing.
Mm-hmm. I just saw one. I was going to pull up. Oh, China was forced to rethink the dollar. This is from CNBC.com. The trade war is forcing China to rethink economic ties to the U.S. So, not all that great of an economy if people are saying that. Let me jump to this next one from episode 204. This one's from Market Watch. Half of Americans are just one paycheck away from financial disaster. Read this before you buy sunscreen this summer.
Before you buy sunscreen, what's up with that?
Well, if you're a mayonnaise, you would need.
They getting torn out and burnt out in the frame. Damn.
Hey, that's the proverbial trimming off the fat meat.
Cut it back to the fat meat. You damn right.
Let me see. Subprime children. I can't get into this, man. All right, that one's behind the paywall, so I'll jump to the next one.
But if you listen to the live stream, guess what?
Economics.
We reread it and you hear the discussion.
Yep, Economics 232.
I raised my hand, Mikey.
Hey, go ahead. What's your
Well, my question, is this a recap of 2019 from all the recent videos y'all did up to 2019? So what's leading to this now? New Year.
We had a discussion last night that you might not be privy to about the state of the U.S. economy.
Okay.
Yep. And we were asked to produce, to cite our sources. And what I'm doing right now is I'm going through all of our 2019 economics hangouts to provide sources to all of the content that, all the statements that we were making to back that up.
Okay. Okay. So all that, damn, that's a lot. Y'all did a lot.
Yeah.
Broadcasts.
Yeah, we're gonna be here for a while.
That's like almost like 360 broadcast. But actually, it might be right.
No, we're over 400. We're over 400, and we're gonna be here for a while.
Oh yeah, y'all gonna be here for like 5 hours.
No, we got probably about maybe 45 more minutes to go. We got about 10 more tabs to go. So,
okay.
Yeah, Mike, he's trying to cover a lot of ground here.
I want to get.
We got more though. We got more though.
Yeah, I want to get to the most prominent stuff because.
Yeah. I got you.
Yep. Let me just.
I mean, how was your New Year's, Nico? I haven't talked to you.
Man, it was really good, man. How was yours, Mr. Rain? How was yours?
It's all right. I mean, I'm not too fond of the New Year's like that, but you know, I treat this like every other year. You know, just going to something different.
I was hanging out. I was up in Harlem last night, man. I was over at a spot, and I was hanging out with me, some of my friends, Chicken D and all, and I'm recovering right now, man. It got kind of crazy, fam. You know how that go. We just having fun, man.
I had to visit Harlem again, man. It's been a while because one time I used to go up there when I come visit family member up there, and I've been slacking from last year. Or maybe this year I might visit Harlem, see how people are doing up in Harlem now.
Coming to town, let me know. I'm supposed to meet with a couple of cats here. Actually, I think Cyber 7 is around here somewhere, but I got to run into him. But yeah, I definitely like hanging out in Harlem. It's a good spot. And I had some fun last night, man. But this year, we I ain't playing, fam. We ain't playing. We ain't playing this year, brother.
That's good. That's good. All right, you can continue. You can continue, Mike B. All
right, let me get off of that.
Let me see how I can put down my hand because it's still showing my phone. Let me see if I can put this down.
Oh, here's another one. USA Today can't pay their bills with love. In many teaching jobs, teachers' salaries can't cover rent.
Damn, that's sad.
New teachers can't afford median rent almost anywhere. Our city-by-city analysis validates a theme in teacher strikes, but that's not the full story. I'm only going to read a paragraph of this. In sunny Miami, bilingual elementary teacher Marie Corredo has 26 years of experience, a master's degree, and passion for helping Spanish-speaking students quickly learn English. Her annual compensation for those skills, $64,000 plus benefits. That doesn't go far in this popular coastal city where median rent has shot up to almost $2,000 per month. And the median mortgage is almost $1,300 per month before taxes or insurance, according to the real estate site Zillow. We spent a good 30% to 40% of our income on our mortgage. I would have moved out of Miami by now if not for my husband's additional income. So you see, a profession like teaching, as benign as it can be, doesn't even cover the cost for some of these people who are trying to make it in a supposed stable economy. If it wasn't for a brother helping out or a man helping out, the ones who sit down to urinate would be getting torn out the frame.
Mike, I was dealing with a young lady a few years back. She was a college professor. She was over at Lehman College teaching biology. She was an adjunct professor, and she was part of the working poor. Mm-hmm. She was straight out. I used to call her Anita, and the only reason why I called her Anita because it was like I needed this, I needed that, I needed this, I needed that. So she always needed something. And at the end of the day, here she was, a professor, supposed to be all highly educated and everything else like this. She didn't have any dough, and she was counting on me for everything. And it was like, oh man, come on, girl, what are you doing? So, Joanne, she was a nice lady, but at the end of the day, man, They were not making any dough, and a college professor, an adjunct professor at that. So
Well,
teaching,
adjunct professors don't get paid shit.
well,
They-
it's I mean, they got coursework. She was supposed to be getting paid some kind of, basically, it was akin to an hourly wage. It looked like it should have been some all right money, but you're in New York, and where she was staying, even right there in the Bronx, not too far from Westchester County, and she was getting torn out the frame. She was getting torn out the frame,
and
torn
it's,
out,
and it's
and didn't have health care,
ironic.
and didn't have help. Say it again.
I said it's ironic because that one girl that I was on that panel with, she was trying to talk. She was trying to tell me how teachers make a lot of money.
Yeah. I heard that. I heard that. The Phoenix. Yeah, I heard
I started laughing at.
Yeah,
I'm like, are you serious?
Yeah, I heard that. Yeah, I heard that. I was like, oh shit. And yeah, you were just you were like, oh man, am I hearing this right? Yeah. I was checking it out. It was pretty funny. But yeah. You have a lot of people talking smack, but it's no joke out here.
Yeah. Retail. This one is from Yahoo Finance. This is from November. The retail apocalypse isn't showing any signs of slowing down. Nearly 9,100 store closures have been announced in 2019, 55% higher than total closures in 2018, according to a recent report from global marketing research firm Coresight Research. On November 25th, AC Moore's parent company announced its 145 stores will close, with up to 40 of them set to become Michaels. Nothing to do with me. Coresight, which has offices in Manhattan, London, and Hong Kong, tracked the 5,864 closings in 2018, which included all Toys R Us stores and hundreds of Kmart and Sears locations. Bankrupt footwear company Payless Shoe Source, who MOT was just talking about, which closed its remaining U.S. stores in late June, accounts for the largest number of closings with more than 2,500. The going out of business sales and liquidation of other brands is expected to continue. So again, stores getting torn out the frame. Where do you think these employees are going? Let's look at this for a second. If they're shifting their operations to online, which is a form of automation, where you can have a one-click sort of buy, as you see, where are those people who used to work in the brick and mortars? Where are they going? If automation creates 2 to 3 jobs for every job that it replaces, where are those Payless shoe salesmen going to, or salespersons going to?
Good question. I mean, because it's a point that I hear reverberated. However, those that espouse it have yet to really give us any insights as to where the growth industries are. Now, we've discussed it. We already told you what the fourth industrial-based entry-level position looks like. Refer to, what was it, the economics, and I think it was also maybe space and tech from last week. Mike, when we were talking about the job postings on SpaceX and Tesla.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so in our brief, we could deep dive into that, and perhaps, no, we have. Dude, we've talked about careers. We talk about this shit all the time. I just think that people really can't correlate the tech-based society that we're headed into, where your entry-level job is an electric car assembly technician.
Mm-hmm.
Like I think there's a bit of a disconnect. People really can't quite see it like that. That sounds like more of something you need some sort of specialized certification or degree in. You need to have some sort of electrical engineering degree to do something like that. But we showed you that Tesla just requires a high school diploma or GED.
Well,
really? Wow.
You know what it is? People are just not really getting used to the idea that we're moving into a more technically oriented society. We're starting to move into that area, and folks have a little bit of an issue with that. I understand why, because a lot of folks are saying, "Hey, I'm not good at math. I'm not a techie. I'm not this. I'm not that."
Mm-hmm.
That's the case. We ain't gonna make it. The UBI is going to come in to kind of cover some of those who are going to be kind of caught out there, early on. But you're going to, the educational game, the training, and everything else like that we're going to have to take over the next 20, 30 years is what's really important. That's what's going to help you make the transition for the next generation. You have to be trained for this, and folks having a hard time with that. Mike, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, let me get to this next one real quick.
Okay.
Company.com, how a basic income could deliver reparations for people of color, or for those who don't believe in UBI.
Hello. Oh shit.
In June, the Atlantic writer Ta-Nehisi Coates
Oh,
testified.
did I just say UBI there? Did I just say UBI?
Universal based income, $1,000 a month.
Let me read this real quick. Ta-Nehisi Coates testified before Congress in support of H.R. 40, a bill that would establish a commission to study reparations, repayment for wrongs inflicted on people of color in the U.S. Through slavery and decades of racial bias and segregation. This was 5 years after Coates published the blockbuster article, The Case for Reparations, which cracked open the dialogue around the need to thoughtfully and deliberately compensate for the ways in which Black people in America have been systematically disadvantaged. So reparations is not just about slavery, but also Jim Crow and other areas of discomfort. At the same time, this conversation was evolving another idea. Basic income was gaining momentum. The concept of a basic income revolves around giving Americans living below a certain income threshold a flat payment to supplement their earnings and lift them out of poverty. Because more than 1 in 5 Black people live in poverty, 2.5 times the rate of white people who do, politicians who are now advocating for basic income like policies say that what they are proposing is a step toward racial justice. But could it go further? Could a basic income designed deliberately be a way to deliver reparations to people who have faced historic disadvantages in the U.S. economy?
Now, Mike, real quick.
Yes, sir.
I posed this question to and I think you were listening. I posed this question to everybody. That's why I laughed when you brought this article up, because I'm putting this shit right back out on the table. I asked everybody yesterday. I said, would you be okay if your reparations came in the form of a UBI? Tell me I'm lying. Go check out Ramil's shit. Trying to tell y'all cats, man.
In a new paper for the progressive think tank Roosevelt Institute, I'm not even going to try to, Jumpa proposes that a basic income program could be rolled out in a way that both boosts the incomes of people living in poverty while also intentionally closing wealth gaps that have resulted from discrimination. But I
raised my hand.
I'm actually reading the article. I need to read the article first before you.
Oh yeah, I just want to make sure. Go ahead, that's it.
Is the vice president of the programs and strategy at the Insight Center for Community Economic Development, a research organization dedicated to the advancing economic security. In her work, she focuses on understanding why wealth disparities exist in the U.S. and how to close them. The racial wealth divide in the U.S. is profound. Today, the 400 richest white families in the U.S. own more wealth than all Black families and a quarter of Latino families combined. Okay, Black people make up almost 50 million in population. Think about that. Since the 1980s, Black wealth is in the U.S. has actually declined by half. Gender is the site of another extreme wealth divide. So, as the idea of basic income gains popularity, Juma tells Fast Company it's a sign that people in the U.S. are willing to confront the fact that many people are struggling to reach financial stability in the economy. But any idea like this has to take has to have a reckoning in it around racial and gender inequality. She says we have to be accounting for the way government-sponsored policies have led to the inequalities or inequities we see today. That might look like enacting a basic income policy with a tiered structure that corresponds to wealth status and historic disadvantage. Jumia cites an idea conceived by community change president Dorian Warren, who's also one of the co-founders of the Economic Security Project, which advocates for and enacts poverty alleviating programs called universal basic income. This model calls for an additional payment to be given to Black families on top of a standard stipend distributed to all families that qualify for the program. The plus model acknowledges that the wealth created in the U.S. inextricably linked to Black labor, sweat, and tears, and the community has never received the benefits created from that labor, Charter writes. The additional payment could be determined by looking at the gap between white and Black wealth and applying a proportional extra stipend to the lump sum. A similar approach could be taken to address gender wealth inequities, Charter says. Reparations are often discussed as one and done project, a single payment dispersed to Black families to account for the cascading disadvantages of slavery. But no silver bullet for reparations. Money is important, but if every Black person gets $1 million check at the end of the day, that's not going to transform our economy. Building a racial justice element into a program like basic income would force a sustained engagement with inequality in the US and allow for the way we address it to evolve over time. It's also important, she adds, that programs like this be designed with the communities they are designed to reach. How the money is distributed, whether it be an annual lump sum or monthly payments, should be a choice. The idea behind the plus model of a basic income is to equip women and people of color with enough money to lift them out of poverty. So UBI isn't, this pie in the sky. This is something that they're actually talking about implementing. Some people say it's fool's gold. Some people will say that, it's BS. But this is something that they're actually tying into reparations. So people will talk about reparations and try to separate UBI, but you cannot separate the two, because this is how people will be compensated.
Well, okay. I think somebody had their hand up before I did. So who had their hand up?
Dr. Phoenix, go ahead, and then we'll go to Chaos Reign.
No, I was just gonna say that is a trick bag and a half. $1,000 a month. It costs you more than that just for childcare. $1,000 won't cover nothing in this country.
Well, you know what that's about, Dr. Phoenix? That's just about at least you can buy something to eat, and not to starve to death. That's all that is. But anyway, go ahead.
And you're trying to fix wealth inequalities when you're spreading it out to
totally agree with you, and I got a whole totally agree with you. You are seeing that correct.
I mean that's a trick bag and a half. But go ahead.
No. Go ahead, Chaos. Go ahead, because I want to go right after him. Chaos, go ahead. Chaos reigns. Go ahead.
Yes, hold on. It's interesting you mentioned that. I'm trying to remember my thought, but I will say this. To what Nagon said, even UBI, that will help. One thing with technology today is people not catching on the times, and like always, people have to adjust during times. It has done this in the previous century when the industrial started to come around. People had to make adjustment. People going to have to make adjustment in this new digital age too, right? They like it or not, so they could moan and whine about it. They go have to adjust one way or the other. Systems change, and you have to adjust to it. That's all I'm trying to say.
All right, I would just say that the UBI is definitely it's going to come about just to keep your ass from freaking starving. Real reparations. I've looked at this thing in depth. Real reparations has to come through. Have put that money into a very large Black banking repository, and you get your land, get them 40 acres in that mule. Okay, that 40 acres, and then have that bank start lending to people on that land and start building that land up, and you'll see what happens after that. It's a whole new game changer. This is what they don't really want you to have. That's why we got to fight that. But that money should go into a large banking institution, and then you get a piece of land, and you're able to get loans to develop your land and develop those land development projects, and you are looking at a whole new fucking ball game.
Yeah, keep in mind that reparations for slavery and reparations for everything else after that is radically different. So those who would be considered American descendants of slaves or ADOS would actually have to identify themselves in order to to prove their lineage. And so those people would actually be targeted in terms of the UBI, right? The one lump sum that they would just get. How they would be compensated is through maybe a sort of debit card or treasury bonds or treasury notes for that matter. Like the article said, it's a more of a choice for the person receiving it, not for the person going without.
Now, Mike,
Yeah,
let me
but
ask you.
I wouldn't want to throw that all into your reparations, because I guess, I understand reparations is all about, and wasn't about no UBI. This was about, I just want to say one thing, that Homestead Act, if you take a look at all that land that they gave the white people that came over when they come up, police up by bootstraps, but they gave them that land, and after 5 years, they worked that land, and they had that, and that would be equivalent to $1 million being given to them today, to start out, to get a jump start. If somebody give you $1 million to get a jump start on your game, that's a pretty nice little cash. That's a pretty nice little infusion, and that's the kind of thing that we need here. Here for us is to get an infusion like that to get us further jump started to catch up, and because all this was designed so you didn't get a shot.
Well,
I'll leave it at that.
UBI is a mechanism. They're not saying that everybody.
Right. I agree with that.
Like, how would you?
Yeah, I agree.
A direct one-to-one payment system.
Yeah, but
Well,
I agree.
What I think is going to happen, well, if the reparations are distributed as some type of funds, cash funds, or some type of credit card, I think for a lot of the recipients of these of the reparations, that money will find its way back into the hands of the greater populace through consumerism.
Well, of course.
There has to be a definitive plan, and in order for that plan to actually, to really have relevance, is if you have an actual change in the mindset of the people that's going to be receiving this money. Like for somebody like me, somebody like Mike V, somebody like Complex, we're not going to go out and just buy stuff and not really think about the trajectory. Because, okay, say somebody who thinks they're smart, right, and says, okay, with this reparation money, I'm gonna go out and go buy a house. And then they go out and go buy a house, not thinking about that there's property taxes, there's maintenance, there's HOAs, all these things that have come along with home ownership. And then somehow that house finds its way back into the greater populace. So it's like there's really some other stuff that needs to come along with reparations. Don't just give people the money because they'll lose it.
Super Trans.
Well, Super Trans. I'm of the belief that people are going to do the right thing. Most people are going to do the right thing with the money. Especially a lot of people who, if they got money like that, a lot of people would do the right thing. I think that's what a lot of people fear. It would also be a tremendous stimulus to the economy. It would stimulate the economy immensely. So there'd be a lot of benefits behind it, but the psychological reasoning behind these white folks and what they've sold over the last 200 years about you and all this kind of stuff has been injurious. And in fact, it's actually hurting them as well. The mayonnaise man, these guys could actually benefit immensely by working with you on this. There's a lot. There's a big piece to this, but I'm just saying, as far as us just talking about this UBI as itself, I believe we have to look at it for what it is. If they're talking about some of this, is to keep you from literally, dumpster diving, if you can, or literally starving to death in the street. So it's really a stopgap measure. I would say that could be part of a reparations piece, but that's not where our reparations would be.
Well, no, I think what Mike was indicating here is that there's a universal application to it, right?
Right.
And then and you could also use it as a mechanism for reparations disbursement. So
right.
it could say that again, Mike.
Right, when they fill out the application for the UBI and they identify themselves as descendants of slaves, and that makes the payment method that much easier. It's a mechanism.
Right, that's what I mean. Let's not mix the two up, right? This is the reason why I asked once again on Ramil Show. I said, would you guys be okay if your reparations came in the form of a UBI? Because it's the most sensible way to really do this shit. When you really think about it, like when you think about what I'm not gonna name names just yet. When you think about what a lot of other people are making demands for with regards to reparations, I mean, they make these demands with no sort of model behind how you would feasibly make something like this work. Okay, so that's the reason why the reparations discussion, as it's typically had here, like on YouTube and and shit like that, it's largely a lot of just it's talk, but there's no meat and potatoes to it. So you have to actually look at a very real mechanism of how you would administer something like this. The most sensible way, or the most sensible thing to do, would be to use a mechanism like the UBI, and for those who qualify, there's a reparations disbursement on top of the universal disbursement.
Well, City brought up a point some days ago. He always brings this point up about streaming money that Ripple has. I think Ty City, is it Ripple that came out with the streaming money deal through cryptocurrencies? I think Ty City might have.
He's muted. I think he's muted.
Yeah, he might have fell asleep. So Ty City talks about this streaming money application of they would compensate you on the fly, right? So there is no waiting, for it to go, 72 hours of a bank transfer. That happens within real time, right? I shake your hand. By the time I finish letting your hand go, that money has already been transferred.
Yeah. Every time the ledger updates.
Right.
I'm here.
Are you awake, bro?
He's awake. He's awake, dude. He's awake.
No, yeah. It's pretty much the internet of money, streaming money, is what's coming.
All right.
All that stuff is gonna be settled on ledgers, and yeah, it's gonna be instantaneous.
Right, and that's how reparations would actually be facilitated, is through a distributed ledger of who's who and how you identify them. When they create this sort of list for descendants of slaves, we can, a lot of people in the ministry say they can trace their lineage back all the way to, the 1800s. Okay, well, you have to fill out this application that goes into a distributed ledger, which then has a streaming money application behind it, like Ty City just said, in through a UBI aspect. So that, you have to think on the next level of how this is going to go about.
Exactly.
Yeah.
All right, let me go to this next article.
That is somewhat of an answer to it, though.
Yeah. Did I stepped away for a second? Did Chaos Rain go?
Yeah, he did.
Okay, okay. All right, next one is from Forbes.com. Millions of jobs have been lost to automation.
Did
Economists.
somebody say something, my name?
No, don't worry about it, bro.
Very good.
Weigh in on what to do about it. This is from June 15, 2019. Artificial intelligence and automation promise to usher in a new era of inexpensive goods, effortless personalization, and freedom from tedium. Yet beneath the surface of innovation, a current of economic disenfranchisement threatens to sweep society away. This week, business leaders, policymakers, and researchers convened at the MIT Media Lab for MTech next to discuss how to wrangle in exponential technological changes without breaking the economy as we know it. Lockheed Martin uses augmented reality in the construction of its new Orion spacecraft. Technicians don the Microsoft HoloLens and see an overlay detailing exactly which piece from among thousands goes where. Shelley Peterson, Lockheed's head of emerging technologies, reported that the preliminary use cases result in over 90% of reduction in touch labor, turning what once took multiple shifts into work that one person can do in a matter of hours. So where do you send all those multiple techs in multiple shifts? Where do you send them off to? I thought automation was supposed to create more jobs.
Let's see here. So I'm still trying to figure out where I'm still trying to find it, man.
Yeah. Over 2% of Americans, 7 million people, lost their jobs in mass layoffs between 2004 and 2009. Workers without a college degree are particularly at risk. Production met automation and moved overseas, their broader citizenry enjoyed cheaper products, while large sectors of the workforce were left with a loss of livelihood. Automation creates more jobs for every job that it replaces. Ask those people who lost their livelihood. Harvard fellow in technology and public purpose, Susan Winterberg, shared that laid off workers typically see a permanent 17 to 30% reduction in wages when they return to the workforce. If they don't re-enter the job market within 2 months, resume callbacks drop dramatically, and many are left with no choice but to join the gig economy as contractors without benefits. They are predisposed to suffering from a menagerie of woes, from depression to marital problems. Their children are even 15% more likely to repeat a grade in school. Disenfranchised workers are rightfully angry and express it with their vote. David Arthur, MIT professor of economics, finds that we are importing political polarization. Both Republican and Democrat districts that were heavily impacted by automation and outsourcing tended to oust moderate congressional representatives in favor of more conservative or liberal ones, respectively. Furthermore, the researchers found that in presidential elections, counties with greater trade exposure shifted towards the Republican candidate. The politician who promises to make America great again speaks the right language, offering nationalistic sentiment and relief for those caught in the technological crossfire of the inevitable future. Inevitable, meaning that you will be replaced by lines of code. But in the words of Benjamin Franklin, well done is better than well said. In this regard, workers need action. What to do? Wintersburg suggests a policy of mandatory early notification to workers. Companies should report planned workforce changes to a global automation observatory. This gives workers time to look for a job, becoming unemployed, and governments, civil society, time to plan for specific reskilling, tax revenue forecasting, and recruitment of new businesses. So what they're saying is, give them a heads up that you will be unemployed. But automation, for every job that it takes away, 2 or 3 jobs supposed to be created, but ask these people if they're going to be working after 2 months. MIT Sloan professor Paul Osterman recommends tapping into America's 1,600 community colleges to reskill displaced workers, as these institutions effectively yield large wage increases for students. Another option may be employer or government subsidized online training and digital degree programs. As an asterisk, I don't think you'll be able to get that nursing degree in digital format. I don't think that's going to happen.
No, you never will be able to. There will always be a clinical component, which means you have to be in person.
Mm-hmm. At least one thing is clear: doing nothing is not an option. Entire industries have evaporated from the American economy. This will only expand in years to come. So we talked about this last night. The American economy is doing well. They're leading the world. According to this, entire industries have evaporated from the American economy. This will only expand in years to come. Rather than fight technology, we should embrace it and prepare workers for workers whose fields move overseas or are learned by robots. Every human deserves the opportunity to learn skills that will carry him or her into the future. See, the morality aspect comes into this, where poor person who's unemployed. But as this person just said, rightfully, that rather than fight technology, we should embrace it. The problem with the Black community is that they have been Luddites for the last couple of generations.
Slow to adopt and adapt.
Yeah, refusing. So again, that's from Forbes, and that was we covered this June 15th.
It's a lot of receipts, bro. I'm just saying.
No, I should put these receipts on the blockchain if I could. But
I mean, yo.
Man, I don't know that. Yeah.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
You need to be an accountant. You need to be an accountant, man, to get a hold of all these receipts and take a look at them, add them all up. Damn.
I mean, because there's another individual we're gonna address here at the end of all this, but
yeah,
he's laying the groundwork here. Yeah, we laying the groundwork right about now.
Yeah, Massachusetts bill would test the idea of universal basic income. A bill under consideration at the Massachusetts State House is aimed at testing the idea of a universal basic income. The long shot bill would create a pilot program that would include 100 residents in each of 3 economically diverse cities or towns. At least one of the communities would be located in a rural part of the state. Everyone participating in the program would receive $1,000 a month for 3 years and agree to participate in the study. After the 3 years are complete, the bill calls on the Department of Housing and Community Development to submit a report looking at the effects of the program, including whether a universal basic income could be used to address historic inequalities, including institutional racism. So that's what's happening I would consider that Massachusetts as being one of the most liberal states. It's also one of the most racist states, and this is the sort of conversations that they're having. Again, people who think that UBI is fake, they're actually having these discussions. I've been a part of one discussion so far, so they are heavily talking about it.
Well, for those who think UBI is fake, they already tested it out, up in Stockton, a city, a couple hours up the road. So yeah, and Alaska's had a dividend-based UBI in existence for some time. And I mean, dude, like, why, like, really? We gonna debate shit that's already in existence, things that have been tested, various legislative bills that are in the halls of the House and being discussed. And all right, let me shut up.
Yeah. I don't know why we don't have a docket for that one. Let me see. All right, we got five. We got 5 more live streams to go through, and then.
Okay, I'm gonna step away, guys. I'll talk to you later.
Hey, have a good one, bro.
You too. Take care, and take care, Nico, and everybody else.
All right, brother. Peace.
All right, Chaos. Peace, bro.
All right. Let me see if I can find one article that points to a lot of what we were talking about. You know what? I think let me just go through these last couple, and then we'll just open it up for discussion, because I think we've made our point. I don't want to spike the football in the end zone so much.
I mean, I think we touched on everything.
I just want to make sure we covered all bases, man. Yeah, I think we're done, man. Stop sharing my screen.
All right.
Yeah, I mean, it's open right now, so you guys can jump in and just go ahead.
Okay. Well, I think this was a really good start to 2020. By having this, just really kind of serving as an addendum for 2019. Largely, it's a kind of like a summation of just what the key themes and topics were, and how it all correlates to 2020. So when we're on other panels and things of that sort, and we're having these inputs on the conversation. I think it's good that we were able to kind of encapsulate 2019 so that people can understand the position that we come from when we speak to something of a specific nature. Case in point, yesterday on Ramil's channel and various other venues that we've been in. You know, we were on Gabs as a collective talking about these very things. I think we did Prophet of Thought in 2019. Trying to think of the other platforms we've been on. I think we were on BGS's sometime last year, I think. You know, so this isn't just, you know, for the detractors out there. This isn't just talk from a bunch of dudes who geek out on shit like this. You know, that's not what this is, right? And the articles point to that. So, you know, it's like, in the face of facts and figures and very real, you know, industrial indicators and stuff, don't come at us with speculation. Don't do that. That's being disingenuous. And in my view, it makes light of the work we put in on a daily basis. Wait, did I cut out? Can y'all hear me?
No,
I
I
hear you.
I hear you, brother.
Oh, okay.
I don't know. I think Mike might have. Is Mike still there? Did he cut
Okay,
out?
with Mike, I think maybe Mike might have muted.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I think he might
you
have
know, and then the other point, I thought I cut out. The other point I kind of wanted to make, and maybe this can kind of segue to the open chat discussion, because there's a particular individual that I think we have to address. And I'll preface it like this: like, the new paradigm that we're moving into, you know, this 8.0 shit, the way it's currently constructed, it's going nowhere fast. And you can see that by the fact that in 2019, you saw a split even amongst that shit. It was already a debated idea. It was already an idea that already kind of split the diaspora up in a lot of ways, because you'll say that somebody whose father's Nigerian but mother is ADOS ain't typically ADOS, and you want to get into all these little nooks and crannies and shit, and you can't really form no kind of true political constituency or basis on petty ass ideology such as that. You're going nowhere fast. And you saw that by the fact that all of a sudden you had a split. Now it's foundational something. Then you got this 8.0 shit. And in looking at both of them, none of them really align with where global trends are pointing to. All the shit we just covered, like, let's look at it diametrically speaking. Like, let's take the concept or the ideas of what ADOS is supposed to be in terms of a political bloc, right? Versus fourth industrialization. Is there any alignment?
Well, no. I'm glad you highlighted that, because I'll say this much. You got one group of individuals who comprise this ADOS group. I mean, they're just completely irrational. I mean, then you got
and I'm going to speak to the one particular individual here in just a minute that we're referencing, but go ahead.
Yeah. And then you have this other group of individuals who consider themselves FBA or whatever. They're not irrational. They're just, they have a bit of, they have cognitive dissonance going on, because you're not just going to nigger your way to prosperity here. Okay. I think a lot of Black folks think that they're going to be able to do the bare minimum. And I think that's what's coming out of the camp and the folks that are leading that whole FBA movement, because they tell you a lot of stuff, but they don't tell you what they necessarily do. And they certainly sure as hell don't tell you how they how they have a plan to move those folks who follow those people in that camp, how they plan to move those people forward. Because again, I mean, it's not enough to just merely say that yes, we're declaring we want reparations, but again, there has to be a very feasible plan for how are you going to utilize this, even if you were to able, even though you were to get this. And again, I don't hear nothing coming out of either of those camps that even reflect that. You cannot have, and I sent these links to Mike, so I don't know if I don't know if if he stepped away or whatever was going on. But I sent some links to him, so he should check them. Hopefully he'll check them out today. But I will say that as a whole, there's quite a bit of cognitive dissonance happening in Black society. Folks talking about what you can do with X amount of dollars and all this stuff. Like, I don't think I think we think too small, too narrow-minded, too myopic.
Right.
And so again, the goals and the standards we set for ourselves reflect that myopic thinking.
Yeah, and let's kind of speak to the narrow-mindedness and the somewhat myopic viewpoint of an Edward Anderson. Because he'll call out a Mike or Mike V, who routinely presents information as a part of a collective that says, there's strength in dollars and numbers. So if we have more of a globalized agenda, collectively speaking, more can get done with less work. Understanding the true nature of the reparations discussion and all of that, you got to understand something, right? Like we just noted maybe about 30 minutes ago, you're going to have to become very familiar with the concept of a UBI, right? If you really want to have a serious discussion about that shit, then there's your starting point. And that was the same thing I relayed to Ramil yesterday. See, just like you said, the myopic narrow-mindedness, right? In your mind, you think it's going to be this whole thing, right? When in all reality, it's more or less going to probably be predicated upon some sort of technological solution that's going to execute it. You see,
well,
so
I would say this much: I didn't know he had necessarily a problem with with whatever Mike was saying or what was coming.
Well, he has this thought or this idea that again, and I kind of put it to some of the silly notions of this ADOS thing. And this is coming from somebody who is by their very definition is ADOS. I'm just pro common sense, right? I'm pro what works. So, someone like a Mike V can't, who has grown up in America as a Black man, okay, somehow doesn't understand what it means to be a Black man who's grown up in America. Or at the very least, he can understand it, but can't really speak on it.
But here's the thing about Mike V,
Right.
just given what he himself has disclosed about his own upbringing, about how he's gotten to where he's gotten in his life. I mean, his story is very much the quintessential Black male story in America.
Well, this is why it's like it's like fundamentally speaking, like that's not a sound philosophy to use as the basis of a political position. That it just creates so many cracks and holes in your shit. It quickly becomes a fissure, which then becomes a wide gulf, which then becomes something the size of a fault line. And next, you have a full-on division, and you already saw it.
Yeah,
I think,
and that's what I was gonna say.
No, time out. Whoa, time out. I think that's the point. I think that's the point, because it's not based on how you grew up or your experience actually being here. It's definitely based on a lineage.
Well, here's the problem with this idea of lineage. Most Black people don't know their lineage. I don't give a damn what folks out here telling you.
Well,
Most folks don't.
no, I understand that, but that's what I'm saying.
No. Let's not get away. No. Hold on tight. No. Let's not get away from the point here. Let's not get away from the point here
Well,
because
it is.
I'm bringing it up. But this is specific to
You
Mike.
said that's where the separation is.
No. This is specific to. Wait, hold on. This
lived experience of a Black man in this country.
Yes.
That's what we're talking about. This has little to do.
I understand that part.
So the whole thing is when we have these hangouts here, and we're speaking from the position of Black men who are here in the United States, because Mike's lineage is Bajan, that does not negate the information that he's relaying, his analysis.
No,
what would work to the betterment of Black folks. Okay, none of that shit doesn't negate what it is that he does.
Yeah, so
for your benefit, might I add.
I don't get where ADOS even comes into this situation.
You have to ask Edward Anderson. That's why I said I don't want to get away from the point. This is a very specific point that that needed to be addressed.
Right. So we come from a Black man, Black person first. You know what I'm saying? Black American space first. Right? And so you saying that Edward is looking at things through I'm different than you niggas. Right?
Well, here's the problem. Here's the problem.
Because I got my own grievances with Edward, but I'm gonna catch him and go back and forth with him myself.
Well, I don't personally. I don't. I like the brother. I like some of the things he say, but I do understand.
I don't have nothing against him. I just want to.
It's nothing against him, but
no. What
we can't let like disingenuous. We can't let that shit slide, man.
No, and that was what I was getting to, because I understand the camp that he normally subscribes to. He normally subscribes to, let's just be honest here, the Tariq Nasheed, Jason Black camp.
Yeah.
I would say this much. Mike grew up in Boston. So he grew up in quintessentially one of the most racist cities in the damn country. Anyone's familiar about the history of Boston knows what's up there. So I mean, if we're talking, what we're speaking to is the everyday experience of black males in this country. His upbringing is no different than mine, and I grew up a half a country away in Chicago.
And I grew up on the West Coast, clear across the country.
Right, but Edward Anderson is from that. They don't like you though, sir.
I don't care where he's from in that regard. Here's the problem.
But that's what I'm saying though. I get the gist of the conversation now, is that there's a division between Black men that shouldn't be there.
Here's the problem with that, Ty. Here's the problem.
This artificial division.
It's artificial because the brain trust is comprised of brothers from all the fuck over the place.
No, I understand that.
So you can't. That's what I mean. You can't get away with that argument, especially if you're gonna call out a member of the brain trust who's part of a conglomerate that's made up of brothers that span the goddamn spectrum from America to Asia and all points in between.
Time out. There's no argument for me. I'm just saying.
I'm not saying you arguing.
Really, I'm gonna keep it above. Y'all need to invite Edward up here so he can explain that shit.
You know what's funny? What's funny is that check it out. What's funny is that we always post the link, right? We always post the link. We always invite people up. I mean, if there's a point in the discussion or something where you object to something, I mean, you could always like click the link and join the discussion. We never said it was a closed panel.
Well,
who said that?
Here's the fundamental problem with that this pervasive thought process. We over here, these other group of Black males over here. Look, I'm just gonna be really honest about this, and it needs to be said. A lot of this is really a rational thought, because again, if you subscribe to those folks that push this thought process, again, I have personally met Tariq Nasheed, spoken to the brother. I have been to Jason Black events, whatever. And I'm telling you outright, if I felt that they were providing you anything that I did not already know, I would be okay with what they were saying. The problem that I have is that it is easy to kind of play on people's insecurities. It is easy to play on where people feel this animosity. It's no more different than what the alt-right has done with white men. And I'm not trying to compare them as if they're some white supremacist group, but what I am saying that those ideologies are very similar, where you can say this one group of black folks is responsible for all the ills of black people as a whole. And therefore you should be excluded from this conversation because you're not this, you're not that. But again, the people that propagate this type of ideology, I have not seen them provide any real tangible solutions for some of the ills that plague black society.
And that right there, Dr.
You can sit here and say black folks haven't competed economically, black folks need to compete economically, but again, what are you doing to push that conversation forward? I mean, I've known these cats for years. I've known these cats back when they still used to do blog talk radio. So look, I mean, it's not like I've been very aware of their work now for a number of years now, and hell, I was aware of Tariq's work back before he even got married, and he was one of the original so-called SYSBM dudes and hanging out in Brazil. But we're not gonna talk about that.
Well, look. Here's the deal, right? Like, what backs our position is everything that we covered earlier in this live stream. Okay, and in covering all of that, I don't know. I'm just saying all signs would point and suggest to the idea or the notion that we as a melanated class of folk might need to reorient ourselves, right? To truly adjust to the shift, as MOT referred to it earlier. Okay, now, what would be the most successful models for doing such a thing? Pursuing a position or an angle that actually kind of divides and lessens the opportunity and the abilities for a broader scale of commerce to take place, not only amongst us, but amongst the globe. Or to say things like, oh, you shouldn't do business with Africa. Why are you looking at Africa? Again, I'm going to reference some of the articles we just covered earlier and what's going on over there and how the globe is converging there. I don't know. These are some economic indicators, global industrial indicators. Perhaps we should pay attention to those things. No. We need to have, apparently, a cultural, like a cultural position that basically locks you out of all that activity.
But I got even better. I got even something even. I have an even better example.
Unbelievable.
Mike offers his time to do personal one-on-one mentoring. The two individuals, the individuals involved that lead these, I don't want to call them cults, but lead these groups, ADOS, FBA, do they even realistically do anything of the ilk, of the sort? The individuals involved in these respective camps?
Not to my knowledge.
I as long as I've known of the two ones that are the two major ones involved with the FBA, they have not done anything to that.
Well, let's keep this relegated to the individual that I'm addressing here. Does he do it?
No. As far as I know, I don't know the brother that well. I've listened to some of his live streams, so I don't want to comment on what he does. But as far as I know of, I would say no.
I mean, just based on the content, I don't think so. You're free to prove me wrong, but I don't think so.
Yeah, I'm just more of the belief that, you know, as far as I'm concerned, you know, I get, you know, the ADOS thing about FBA thing about lineage. I get that, but I'm also saying that, yeah, Mike has probably been more of a black man than most of these cats out here. Let's just keep it real.
I mean, he's done more to
help, to really help brothers out than just sit on here, get on the mic once or twice every week and tell you
about the gynocracy and shit or something.
and tell you how white supremacy has kept you down and all this other shit. No. No, I think if anybody that volunteers their time, they helping black men get into careers that have normally been out of reach for black men, I think that deserves his own merit.
Well, and that's why I had to address this shit. Right. That's why I was like, no. We're gonna talk about this one.
Yeah, so as far as I'm concerned,
has he came out and actually said some shit?
Yeah, it's like the video he put out yesterday.
I didn't hear it.
Yeah.
I haven't really heard it,
Yesterday,
bro.
the day before, or whatever it was, around the 15-minute mark, and I'm just like, whoa, nigga, hold up, man.
But I know him and Mike have had some back and forth in the past.
Well, I mean, the problem, I guess, but like just understand, man, who you clapping at, man. Like, I mean, I don't profess to really know what his platform's about. Like it's he talks a lot about black women. He talks a lot about sisters, and other shit like, celebrities and stuff. And that's not really my lane. You see, so if I know that a cat that I'm part of a cohort with, if I know like he's thorough in his works and somebody's going to disparage him out in the open, you goddamn right I'm going to say something, man.
Yeah, and I think that's just fair. Like I said, I don't know the exact angle upon. I mean, if his angle is really truly just attacking the fact that quote Mike is not quote ADOS, if you will. I mean, again, it kind of proves what I think, as we've seen this fracturing between quote ADOS and FBA over the last month and a half or two. I mean, it kind of shows the problem in of itself. Is like, was there really ever a cohesive message to begin with?
Right, but wait, you're gonna take that position and argue against someone who from a political look. Our political leanings are technocratic, so we're not really. That's the problem. You come into a technocratic venue and you bring some bullshit like that. I understand who you're fucking with, dude. Because none of that shit that calls for separating brothers is a part of this fucking platform. So you going at somebody who's all inclusive with your non-inclusive ass.
Well, here's the problem, because I think this is true for a lot of brothers that, like myself, who have military backgrounds. We've kind of been really kind of on the receiving end of that as well. At least I can tell you from my own personal experience throughout the majority of my adult life. There always been sort of that dichotomy in Black society where, if you were a military Black man, yeah, you were part of this. You weren't really us. You weren't with the actual folk. You were with the man. You over here with these folks. And so again, even in this space, I've heard this repeated many a times. I've been on many a I ain't gonna say many a panel, but I've been purview to a number of panels where brothers.
Hold on. Dr. Phoenix, I don't even mean to cut you off, brother, but wait a minute. Didn't somebody, that sounds pretty elitist, don't it?
Yeah.
Didn't somebody just sit up here and try to call us elitist last night?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm sorry, bro. Continue.
No, and I'll just say this much, because I have been privy to a number of panels where, brothers that have military backgrounds were essentially told you weren't Black, you weren't like us, you're part of the white man, you've been indoctrinated. I mean, even those folks even those folks from those camps, those ADOS, FBA camps, those notable talking heads of those camps have all said similar things about
you light skin, you dark skin, you
hey,
this,
I'm not even. Did he name anybody by name?
Who? Edward?
Yeah.
Mike.
I'm not sure exactly what is his actual beef with Mike, because I mean there are a lot of brothers.
That's what I mean. It's like, yo, no, we gotta talk about this shit.
ADOS quote, but they speak on a lot of these issues, and I know Negroes have had a lot of problems with a lot of these brothers that quote don't share this ADOS background. But I think if you grow, I think you have a right to speak on being a Black man in America if you grew up in one of the most racist cities in the goddamn country, and your experience as a black man is no different than a black man who grew up in Chicago or a black man who grew up in LA. Yeah, I do think you have some right to speak on. I do think you have a right to speak on that. That's just my take.
I mean, I don't have nothing against the nigga, bro, but I mean, sometimes it's some niggas, man, when they talk too much to get to their point, it's a sign of they don't you know what I'm saying? That's one of my grievances. Like, intelligent people can get to their point very quick. You know what I'm saying?
Very
And
succinctly. You don't have to ramble.
sometimes I hear this nigga talking, I'll be like, bro, you know what I'm saying? But I mean, that ain't even my main issue with the nigga. My thing with that is, this nigga will probably talk to Mike, bro. This nigga's a talker. He loves talking, bro.
Well, I mean, no, that's
This
cool.
nigga
And
would,
like I said,
I would like to see them two
fundamentally
have that dialogue together, man. I hope this is a form of invitation.
Well, look, the link is in the chat. It's always in the chat. We always invite people to come up. Look, my main thing is this. Like, I'm trying to reach an overarching point, right? So if you have an issue, make sure you frame it correctly. This is the views and opinions expressed on this platform are decentralized. Now, some of us do take a technocratic position. Mike is one of them. Okay, so that's
What
gonna.
was the grievance?
Well, the grievance is that Mike can't really speak. He's not really ADO, so he can't really speak from the position of a black man in America, or his experiences as a black man in America are artificial, I guess, because he's not truly ADOS or something rather. I don't look. You'd have to ask you'd have to ask him, and you'll probably get like a 10-minute response that really won't go anywhere. But the fact of the matter is,
BGS, you need to come get your son, man.
Look, I mean that's neither here nor there, man. You look. What I'm saying is that you have to frame your grievances correctly. This is my whole point. If his position is one of a technocratic nature and one of a globalist tech-based mindset, then you have to form the correct grievances against his position. Don't come with some bullshit ass ADO shit that don't have nothing to do with what we're talking about.
Because it sounds really emotional.
It sounds like some bullshit.
But that's the thing though, bro. Like, okay, so he got this issue with Mike, and he just goes, instead of confronting Mike, he just having that conversation. He just,
dude, the links are always in the chat, fam. Yeah, and I mean, if he's listening right now, the link is in the chat.
I just came back, so I haven't even heard what has been discussed so far, but I'm just catching up the last 10 seconds. So let me just play the live stream so people understand what he's doing.
Relevant. I can turn like, and I'm talking about anybody. Do you not understand that I can turn this goddamn shit off and act like nothing ever happened? What you all are not understanding is the reality of the situation is that you already know where shit is going.
Hey, Mike, can you pause it? Because I'm sorry. Because, okay, so this is my grievance, and I'm gonna talk to him about it, because I got off a panel and I said that even though we let the community burn or whatever, we still have an obligation to the children, because they're innocent in all of this. And when I got off the panel, he goes, Ty City like, why can't we save everybody, right? So when I heard that, this is my shit, right? You know how I give it up, bro. And he kind of like grandstand on this shit. It's this, I'm tougher than you, I'm bigger than you. Like, some of these niggas got this, I don't care more than you. And you know what I'm saying? Like, I really don't give a fuck. Like, you don't give a fuck, I don't give a fuck. I can walk away from, listen, I can walk away from all of this type of shit. It's like, what? Like, you know what I'm saying? I don't like that attitude, bro. I don't give a fuck. I'll talk to him and I'll tell him that shit, bro. Like,
let me finish playing it so that people can understand the context.
right.
The millennials, they don't care. And what people don't understand is this shit is so fucking small. This shit is really not big. It's like a baby in a crib. And yet, even in that state, you all can't do shit. Because at the end of the day, you folks refuse to check. To give you another example, it's just like it's just like, African Americans. I don't give a fuck you are ADOS, FBA, whatever. African Americans basically saying we need to address our shit. And a lot of these folks that are immigrants, or they got immigrant leanings, or they're first or second generation, they talk in babble mouth. I got mad respect for Mike Vincent, but we disagree with Mike on this topic because Mike Vincent, and as smart as Mike Vincent is, he starts babbling, and it's very obvious that he's not roasting. He's not what I'm talking about, but I'm just saying it's very obvious he doesn't have a foundation in what we're talking about. And Sigma went in there in the Black Burn Trust and really, gave them the facts. And it's like he didn't have any answer for it. Because at the end of the day, you just need to say you right and just leave it alone. Because people are not talking about every immigrant.
Oh wow.
Pause
Yeah,
right there.
yo.
Pause right there.
Wow.
Yo. So we're talking about the discussion when King Sigma came in and he was talking about the Deloitte research, the Deloitte study. That was pretty much everything he said about nursing and stuff like that. If you go back and listen to every one of the panels I've been on, I've been saying that from the very beginning.
Hey, well, wait a minute, Dr. Phoenix. So, but when he went there and I was like, Dr. Phoenix, anyone? And he kind of took it as a slight, but I was like, what the fuck you think he's been coming on here talking about?
Wow, bro.
I've been saying that from the very beginning. If you go listen to any one of those, I've been saying it. In fact, Mike, if you check your email, brother, I sent you a number of links to some stuff just to kind of give you an idea of what's going on. And look, like I said, me and King Sigma, we super cool, got mad respect for the brother. But I think part of the problem is that it's easy to kind of give this very broad macro view of the issue. But the problem isn't the macro, the problem is the micro. And that's what Black folks fail.
So what I got even from the Sigma situation was, it was just a dialogue, really. You know what I'm saying? And I really I didn't even see nothing toxic with it. I think, pushback and people bringing different opinions is okay. You know what I'm saying? I don't think that it's nothing wrong with that.
But King Sigma didn't necessarily disagree with what had been said.
No, but that's what I'm saying. For Edward to come in and act like, oh, why can't you just say you're wrong? And you know what I'm saying? It's like this nigga's cheerleading for, you know what I'm saying? Like,
I totally understand.
Well, the fundamental problem with that. Wait, hold on, Ty.
It's divisive, bro. The shit is.
I know. This is what I'm speaking to, and the other part to this is this. It's also disingenuous as fuck. Why would you do something like that when on a day-to-day basis, what you do is information dissemination, i.e., we read articles and then do the analysis. Wrong where? Admit that you're wrong. Where? Have you clicked the link, came onto the panel, and brought some information that runs counter to what we're talking about? No. Why do you come off talking about just admit that you're wrong, nigga?
Nah, he got online. He opened up a stream. And
come on, bro. Like, yo, dude.
That shit wild,
come fuck with us. Come fuck with us, fam. Come fuck with us, man. The link's in the chat. Come fuck with us.
A lot. You're breaking up a lot.
Yeah, I would say this because Cocaine held just to address something real quickly that Cocaine just put up. It was an open panel. He came up on his own volition. I mean, it was an open panel. I mean, I don't. It didn't even seem like, at least from where I was standing, that King Sigma necessarily disagreed. They just the difference was just really related to the fact that, I think King Sigma was looking at sort of a macro view of the economy in relation to everyone, and what what happens here over Black Brain Trust, we tend to do a micro analysis. So we take the broader perspective of what's happening in these various industries within the economy, and we apply this to Black society, and therefore showing Black people how you can navigate into these various industries and navigate through this current economy. I think that's really where the disagreement is at.
Hey, I got a question. That's
I
what I'm
want to
saying, though.
piggyback off
And
of
then,
what I want to piggyback off of kind of what Dr. Phoenix is saying, because I think this goes into the whole dissent for those of us that have been in the military. People confuse some of the things that we say with a pull yourself up by the bootstraps mentality, and the difference is that we acknowledge that there are disparities. We acknowledge that there are challenges that are unique to those people who are Black, regardless of whether or not you're ADOS or if you're from some other country. As long as you're perceived by the greater populace to be of African descent, you're going to face some adversity. But with that being said, there are ways to navigate within this landscape. And so what that essentially means is that because we face adversity, doesn't mean we could just check out of the game and wait for things to resolve themselves. It's not going to resolve itself, because nobody's going to work towards our benefit but us. And the only way we can work towards our benefit is to position ourselves in such a way that we're of relevance. And I think a lot of people just say, well, you know what? I'm just going to take my ball and go home. I'm not going to play. Well, while you're not playing, everybody else is still playing, passing you by. So you have to jump in at some point and say, okay, you know, the game is rigged. They're playing with the cheat code. They got the game genie over there. He got the pro action replay. You know, he got the freaking he got some other cheat going on this system. But guess what? I'm still gonna put some points on the board, right? And I'm gonna do something. So now I got a couple people that got points on the boards. Let's collaborate and put our resources together, and then that way we can actually position ourselves and if need be, you know, buy ourselves a game genie too, so we can cheat too. I mean, that's the camp that I come from. I don't think it really matters.
Hey,
huh?
Trish, let me chime in real quick, because you know, on one even that whole stance is just disingenuous. One time I was saying my experience as a Black man growing up in America, and this nigga hopped on out of nowhere and said, I know, struggle story, blah, blah, blah. We heard of some shit. He kind of dismissed my experience as a Black man in America. This shit is funny.
Who dismissed your experience?
No, Edward Anderson. He was kind of like, oh, we get it, a struggle story, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, bro, you don't even know me.
Hey, I got a question. Is this more about
saying game genie?
Is this more about Edward Anderson, or is this about like FBA ADOS? Because initially,
no, we played the clip.
Yeah, I heard the clip, but initially,
right, that's what this is about.
It sounded like what Complex, what you were saying was you had like you were kind of like I know you seem like you were kind of going at like FBA, like the whole FBA.
No. What I'm saying is that the position that he has, the issue that he has with Mike is that he's not quote unquote ADOS. I guess because Mike is Bajan. So right. but grew up as a Black man in America. So I guess his analysis on things, we can't really consider it because he's not really ADOS. That's really what his position is.
Well, it's basically a wholesale dismissal of who he is. You know, again, I think the problem is there are these very narrow, myopic point of views at which people approach this scenario. And again, to what Chris was saying, he's exactly correct. I mean, again, everyone else is playing by a set of rules that Black people just refuse to play by.
No, Black people just refuse to play. It's a big difference. Is, you know, even if even if everybody else is cheating and you're playing by the rules, at least you're in the game putting points on the board. You got some black people that say, you know, I'm not joining the military, but then you talking about how you struggling, you can't even get put food on your table, put a roof over your head. It's like, well, what are you doing? Like that's what doesn't make sense to me. And now here's my thing, right? I rock with Edward Anderson. I don't got no issues with Edward Anderson. Everybody has their own perspective on things. I understand where he's coming from, where he feels as though if a lot of times people who are not of quote unquote ADOS descent speak on behalf of people of ADOS descent and speak on behalf of them incorrectly. I get that. I'm not saying that's what Mike B's doing, but I understand where Edward Anderson's come from, and I have experienced that myself, where I feel people who don't necessarily know the experience, but I'm not saying that that's necessarily the case of Mike B, because, you know, here's the thing, right? Everybody has a unique experience. No two black people are the same. Like, I could argue that Edward Anderson doesn't know my struggle because Edward Anderson is light skinned, which that wouldn't be too much of a stretch of the imagination, because there are certain things that he may be able to do, or there may be a certain demographic that he may resonate with more, because they look at him as, okay, well, he's not the stereotypical African American. He doesn't, he can kind of blend. He can, you know, maybe he's, you know, there's a lot of things, there's a lot of nuance to it. But that doesn't discredit his claims to a black experience, not by any stretch of the imagination.
I want to make this clear that because I have stepped away and I haven't been a part of this discussion as of yet. The discussion that Edward is referring to is from Friday's economic hangout between Complex and King Sigma. And I think, and I've talked with Complex about this offline, I think Edward might either be conflating or confused about who was involved in that discussion. And so he used my name, but I think he might have just meant Complex, because Complex was the one engaging in the dialogue between King Sigma and himself. And so for me, I don't have any problems with Edward. You know, I fully support Edward. I promote him. I email him behind the scenes. We talk behind the scenes. But when I heard that yesterday, it's not in reference to New Year's to the New Year's discussion that we had last night. That live stream was in the morning. Before our live stream last night. So he's referring to the discussion that happened last Friday. So the confusion here is that you know, there's this perspective that I don't know, you know, that I spit gobbledygook, you know, I babble. I don't know. I've never heard anybody complain about me babbling on a microphone before. And so I was taken aback by this, and so I discussed this with Complex first to see if he had any understanding of what was going on. He was confused himself, and so I had to go back and listen to the live stream too, and then follow through with it. And then what I come to the conclusion was that I think Edward might have just been referring to Complex, but included me in it, and may have not been listening closely enough to understand the differences and nuances in the discussion itself. This isn't a beef between Black Brain Trust and King Sigma. This is a difference between data and which angle are we looking at this from? The micro angle, like Dr. Phoenix is referring to. And I think there's too much like somebody said earlier, there's too much cheerleading going on hashtags. And that's why you hear a lot of times in 2019, I would go in on the hashtag, these hashtags out here, because a lot of the discussion is always revolved around the hashtag and not the mechanisms and the application itself. So they'll talk about reparations, or they'll get mad at somebody for talking about reparations, but they themselves don't have any sort of, they don't have their own thoughts. Their thoughts are not their thoughts. It's somebody else's thoughts. They listen to somebody else's live stream and then they regurgitate what that other person says, and then they use it for their own talking points. We're not about that over here.
And that's exactly my problem. That in of itself is exactly my problem, is that there's this lemming-like culture within Black society. We, as a collective, Black people latch on to hashtags, latch on to things, whatever's the current movement or
celebrity culture.
and people push that as if that is a fact or that is the state of being. And the problem, like I said, I don't know the brother Edwin Anderson that well. I listen to some of his stuff. I think he's pretty cool. However, I do think, just in general, the problem is this very narrow, myopic view of what Black people are and the experience of someone in society. If you didn't hear me earlier, Mike, I was speaking, because you've explained on numerous panels your background and how you got to where you got, but you said you grew up in Boston, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, my family's not from here.
Yeah, but I know that. But you say, you spent most of your time in Boston for the most part. And my point was that you're in one of the most racist cities in the country, so your experience as a whole is no more different than someone like me who grew up in Chicago, or no more different than someone like Complex who grew up in LA. So and so the problem becomes fundamentally that we have refused to, as Super Triz was saying earlier, we refuse to play the game at all. And that's kind of my problem with the ADOS FBA argument, is that we're relegating what the current state of Black society to everything that everyone else has done, or how they've used us to get ahead, as opposed to you got brothers like yourself who actually devote your personal time to getting brothers into professions that have normally been out of reach for brothers.
And that's where the basis of actual growth comes from, is that you entrench yourself into other organizations and you siphon resources from those organizations. That's where I'm not saying, especially when you have these FBA, ADOS, I'm not hearing any plan of action as how can we maintain the resources within the quote unquote community, because that's the biggest issue. People get money all the time, but the problem is that money leaves the quote unquote community. And I'm not, I say quote unquote community because that's really, really subjective of what you think a community is. But also it sounds to me, Mike, like basically essentially what you're saying is that it's all Complex Design's fault.
Nah, man. Nah, a lot of people have been coming for me, man. A lot of y'all don't know that I get emailed behind the scenes, man. There's some, pretty interesting emails, man. People be coming at me.
Well, because you're the face of the Black Brain Trust, brother. So I mean, obviously there's multiple people involved here, but you're the one that's usually facilitating many of these conversations. So you're the face of it. So people, when they come gunning for people, they're coming for you.
Yeah. And I, my name gets tossed around a lot, and things like that. I don't have any beef with Edwin Anderson, neither does the Black Brain Trust. And I saw the people in the chat. I just want them to be clear on that. We've never we've defended Edwin Anderson since day one. When he used to get attacked on different panels, we've always come to his defense and supported him. And so there's no beef between Black Brain Trust and Edwin Anderson. I don't think Edwin Anderson has a beef with the Black Brain Trust or me personally. I think that sometimes, he can, like some people know, he gets a little long-winded in some of his talking points, and he might be not always coherent, like he might have been in that last live stream. I don't have any beef with him. I could have emailed him about it, but I decided, I'm gonna let him rock, man. For 2020, we don't want any beef with anybody on YouTube or in the manosphere. So we're just trying to keep that clear. But there needs to be some transparency when we have these discussions that someone says something like that about me that's not true at all. I don't consider myself babbling on live streams, especially with that conversation with King Sigma, which is what it was. It was a conversation. It wasn't really a knockdown drag out. We were just having a dialogue about the differences in data, the macro versus the micro. And for whatever reason, people are taking sides. And I'm like, how can you take a side? Like, it's just a dialogue. There's no sides to take on.
A dialogue about data.
Bro. That shit corny as fuck.
It's corny as fuck.
That is the culture here. That was what I was getting at last night when I was speaking. That is the culture that I've seen since I've come in this space.
Then we went to go kick it on MOT hangout. Like, we was, you know what I'm saying? It's all good.
Yeah, yeah.
Well. The point is that
Mhm.
I think that we have to. Well, I don't say we, but I think that the issue that I see amongst ADOS, FBA, whatever how you want to call people, the diaspora, is that they attach themselves to a figure as opposed to the facts. So when you align yourself with a person and then that person veers off the path, right? Or maybe they have some erroneous information, right? You stand by that person as opposed to saying, hey, you know what, I disagree, or well, these are the facts. This is what my research has shown. And so then you have an issue where you have a perpetuation of erroneous information. You have people who surround themselves with people that just co-sign whatever it is that they say. And then you have people who actually subscribe to, like, when ADOS came up, then you have people, everybody change their screen names to such and such ADOS. And hold on for a second. Then I saw some of these same people when FBA came out. They changed their name after they changed it to ADOS. They changed their name to such and such FBA. So, like, whatever comes out, they just attach themselves to it without fully researching, as opposed to saying, "Hey, I agree with some of these things that this person says," and just leave it at that. You don't have to necessarily be such and such, and then FBA, such and such, and ADOS. You see what I'm saying?
I mean, it's absolutely lemming behavior. I mean, you just act like a bunch of lemmings. And again, I'm not saying this in an insulting way. But,
Man,
but there is
Phoenix,
a very immature approach that Black folks have to dealing with real life issues.
Look, man, I stay in my lane, dude. I don't profess to know about the gynocracy like that, and I can kind of.
Hey, time out, bro. let me just go ahead and make this point real quick, bro, because this nigga will be dick riding BGS this, because BGS said that, this, that, and the third. I don't think BGS disagrees with the information that Mike was presenting.
No. Yeah. By and large, no, it doesn't.
So these niggas with it's a personal vendetta, bro. It's, you know what I'm saying? Like, he not gonna tell BGS to just admit he was wrong and this, that, and the third, bro. Like, niggas need to stop it, dog. That's all.
So Complex, you're not changing your name to Complex Design ADOS?
No.
Dr. Phoenix is not going to be Dr. Phoenix FBA?
Hell no.
It might be Dr. Phoenix DMP or something like that.
Nah, look, man.
CEO, maybe. Yeah, I'll put that on it.
I'm just of a fundamental belief that that as a whole,
you said fundamental or foundational belief?
Oh God.
I think a lot of brothers need to start to really think more rationally about, some of the conversations that we allow to get perpetuated in these spaces. Because again, a lot of these conversations just really devolve into, well, I feel this way, you feel that way. It just becomes really more, just really a circular emotional argument.
Yeah, the new label now, man, for 2020 is going to be like the visionary Black Americans or something like that, DBAs or something like that. Database analyst, the visionary Black Americans, SQL, Python.
Oh my God! It's a breakaway society of Python coders and developers.
Yeah, but I mean, so here's the thing, bro. Like, I think there is a conversation for ADOS, FBA, whatever that is, but it's not to be injected into spaces where people are actually unified together, bro.
That's what I mean, dude. That's thank you, Ty. Thank you. And that's why I don't really give a shit what people be talking about, like on in Black YouTube largely, because a lot of shit I don't have nothing to do with me. But with something like that, it's like, yeah, man, like you kind of it's like you punching above your weight class when you do some shit like that, because there's a bigger agenda over here, right, that sees unification as a key component. And as soon as and I'm just saying, man, like, you're not gonna throw pebbles or stones, my pristine glass house like that without me clapping back, because I benefit directly from having the type of relationships that I've forged with these brothers.
Well,
No, well, hold on, Triz. Let me just kind of complete this thought. And there's things where because I've seen the advantages of being able to work together with brothers that come from all spectrums. I'm seeing the international business advantages of having partners like that. You see, it supports a lot of what it is that we talk about as a way to not only just hedge against the shift, as MOT mentioned, but also put ourselves in positions to be successful. Nagon talks about this all the time. You see, so we are a case study, a real-time, real-world example of us bringing intellect into a space and using it for productive purposes. So I'm not going to entertain no dumb shit that would suggest that that's not going to be the best method for Black folks here in America. You can get the entire fuck out of here.
Well, I think the issue is that when we look at unification versus division, we already divided just amongst people who are considered ADOS. Just when you take into consideration productivity, we've already thinned the ranks significantly. So to further exclude individuals based solely on their actual origin, even though if you go back further enough, we all come from the same place, right? But you say, oh, because he's from whatever freaking Jamaica or whatever country, Bahamas, he's not ADOS, so he doesn't have our experience, and he can't speak on our behalf. He can't. What effect do you think that we could have just based on or just taking into consideration those of us who are ADOS or descendants or diaspora, whatever you want to call it, just those of us, and then taking consideration those of us who actually produce? Like what effect, what dent can we actually inflict? Not much. We need all the help that we can get.
Well, that's why it makes more sense to rely on accurate data as opposed to Black culture theoreticists.
You mean how we feel?
Yeah, that.
I mean, Super Triz is exactly correct. I mean, we do ourselves more harm than good by not trying to forge partnerships with other people. Whether they're quote ADOS, FBA, or whatever within the diaspora. If we all agree what the problem is and we all agree what the solution is, I can give a damn about what the hell quote your lineage is. If your alliance is with me at that time, we both agree on what it is, then that's just what it is. Our alliance is good as long as we both agree on the end game.
Hey, Gabe, there's context to all this. Go back to the beginning, bro.
So I mean, again, I think there. I mean, even among ADOS or FBA or whatever hashtag moniker you use, I mean, there's tons of division. Like I said before, you got those of us like myself or Super Triz and some of the other brothers that have military backgrounds. I mean, just last night, part of that discussion last night, we probably spent like half of it talking to two young brothers who were thinking about going into the military. I mean, again, these conversations are not happening. These brothers were getting real true to life game from brothers who were in the military, telling them, if you're gonna do this, this is how it needs to happen. If that recruiter ain't giving you what you want, he's bullshitting you. Tell him to go screw off. I mean, I don't see that happening. And it goes to what I was saying last night. most Black folks don't have an answer when a lot of these young cats come to them looking for stuff, looking for real answers. What I'm gonna do in my life? What are the careers? What are the industries I can get into? And every single time I've been on the panel with you brothers, and one of these young brothers come up, there's always brothers who can answer their questions. I don't see that happening in these other spaces.
We got Cocaine Kells on the panel. You have anything you want to add, Cocaine?
Hey, Kels, Happy New Year's.
Happy New Year's, everybody.
Oh,
No,
there she
everything
is.
good. Everything is good. I don't have anything to add at the moment. Thank you.
Jay Charles, have you spoken yet?
Happy New Year's, bro.
I think Jay Charles might be driving. I think he's
okay.
driving. Yeah, I don't have anything else to add to this. I think we've done our due diligence on the sources that people were requesting.
Mhm.
All right, thank you all for joining us. Please hit the like button if not already done so, and share the video if possible. Also, hit that notification bell so you get the updates from the Black Brain Trust, including those posted on the community tab. Shalom.
So